pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, could we have the reading of the mission statement?
Richmond Community Schools guide students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Thank you. And the vision statement.
Richmond Community Schools, a collaborative community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for lives of choice, purpose, and service.
All right, thank you both. Next we have our celebrations. Dr. Wright.
President Stoltz, trustees, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker, our communications specialist, join us at the podium to acknowledge tonight's honorees. Mrs. Hazelbaker.
So we have two special groups tonight. The first group is going to be our Westview Literacy Committee. Some of you may have seen the video that we had from the Lester Day out at Westview. So if the committee will please step up here so you guys can introduce yourselves. So I don't have to try to remember everybody's name. Come on up.
Mr. Smith, as principal there, and proud principal of Westview Elementary, if you don't mind introducing everyone. And then,
over here we have Linda Morgeson, interventionist at Westview, Cheryl Searles, instructional coach, Linda Allen, second grade, almost said third, but she's in second this year, Jan Robbins, special education teacher, and Nancy Spurlock, I'm sorry, first grade. I'm going to put you in a different grade, I'm sorry. Nancy Spurlock in first grade, who's joining us new this year. And so the Literacy Committee was a new initiative this year. They got underway in part because we've tried to really improve our literacy scores, our reading and writing proficiency and growth for both of our tested grades in 3rd and 4th grade throughout the building. And so the idea was proposed to have a really good celebrate author come in and have an excellent event that could really try and get things going in a positive direction and get both students and staff excited for the opportunities that would exist there. So I'll take it over here and let people share their contributions.
Good evening. So we just kind of wanted to tell you kind of how this idea came about. So as Nick said, we wanted to do something with literacy. We really wanted to start building a literacy-rich culture at Westview. And so we thought that bringing an author in was a great way to do that. It always started with an idea with a small group, and then we brought it to the staff. We had a meeting, a PD, where we brainstormed ideas with the teachers of what we could do with Lester Laminate. It was kind of easy to introduce him because 4 of his books are in our F&P series. So that they were already affiliated with his writings. So we brainstormed different things that we could do to get all the kids involved and get all the teachers involved, and the teachers really took off with it. At that meeting, we talked about ways we could decorate the building, get kids involved in getting all that done. So what we did is we went around to the kids too. We really wanted to get the kids excited so they knew what was happening, so that we just didn't have a day where Lester came and they didn't know who he was. So we did book talks. He has 8 books that he has. So we did book talks where we went around to each classroom and the kids got to pick a title of from the book talks, and then we purchased a book for every student in the school. And with that, then at the event, Lester signed them for them. So that was very exciting to them. When they found out they were getting one of his books, they were like, wow. So that was exciting. Then we also purchased books for all the teachers. We purchased all 8 books, all his books for that he wrote for children for our teachers, and we started that with an assembly, and we presented the books to the teachers so that we made it a big deal that they were going to get to these books and they were going to get them read by their teachers, and they were going to really know Lester Laminate when he came. That went over great. They were very excited. They knew October 10th was going to be an exciting day at Westview. So as that developed, we started, the teachers got together and they made bulletin boards. Every class made a bulletin board that had to do with one of his books. So all the children in that class were involved in that. So they knew that book, they got their writings or their something on display. Then we also had books that the classes weren't doing, so we did them as a school, And we had 2 bulletin boards where every student, like one of them, if you got to the school, we have peacocks everywhere. And every student made a peacock feather that they got to decorate. And then we made bulletin boards out of those peacocks, so they were involved in that. And then we also had one where every student in the building made bees, because one of his books was The King of Bees. So every student, all down the hall, we had decorated with bees. So those were 2 of the ways where everybody got to be involved. And then obviously they were involved in their classroom bulletin board. And then we had 2 other bulletin boards that had to do with his books that had pictures of kids with his books. So either one of them, my favorite was one where we took pictures of all their smiles, because he wrote Trevor's Wiggly Wobbly Tooth, and there's a smile of all the first and kindergartners on that bulletin board, and they go around and look and try to find their smile. So they were very involved, very connected, and that's what we wanted. So we wanted teachers connected, kids connected, and by doing all these activities up front, I think we made it a very exciting day.
So I'm assuming Lester was impressed when he came in.
He was.
The entire
He was
school is
very-
an ode to him.
I don't know if I'm taking somebody's thunder, but when we opened the day with Lester, we had a red carpet, and all the kids got to come out to the. Oh,
sorry. I'm so shy.
I'm so shy.
You know that. This is his bookmark, and you'll see a list of his books, and then some really interesting facts on the back about him. And as you can tell by what I'm wearing, that we were just a little bit obsessed with him, because not everyone would wear somebody's face, but we proudly wore it that day. And so, in order to make him feel really welcome, we had him chauffeured to the school. He came with a red carpet, like the star that he is. And when he arrived, it was like a sea of blue, because everyone had on blue, teachers, students alike. Everyone clapped and said, "Hi, Lester." I mean, the kids really felt like they knew him, which was probably the neatest thing to me. And they still say Lester, and they see pictures of him, and they talk about him.
that's my part.
That's your part. See, there's just so much. There's so much to say.
I love it.
And
It really was a big project.
oh, it really was. And I guess the only other thing I want to add, so I don't take anybody else's thunder, is we made preparations. The committee made preparations for him to have a really nice hotel room, and then we had a basket there that was cluttered, filled with things from Indiana. So he would know he'd been to the state of Indiana. Because some people say Virginia or Richmond, that must be West Virginia. No, it's Richmond, Indiana. And one of the people that were just very, very generous was this Old National Road Center. I went out there thinking that maybe they had free stuff that they gave for visitors. Well, I found out they don't. But they have all kinds of neat things. But when I told her what it was about, I mean, they had a basket that was super generous. So if you ever get a chance, go out there too. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, here I am, okay. I guess my part was more, I'm just talking about like, I've never seen kids so excited. Like, I've got second grade, and that's really new to me this year too. But they were just, we were reading the books, and I mean, they wanted to talk about everything was in there. I mean, they were just ecstatic about it. And then some of them, they actually made cards in my room when he got there because they wanted to give me more cards, and just going through the books and the excitement. And during conferences, my parents were just like, oh my gosh, they go to the my students going to the my child's going to the library, or because they really love this author. And so they were really, I think our parents were really surprised too. And I've not seen anything so exciting for a long time in the schools. And I've been around a while, and that was probably the most exciting thing I've seen for kids in a long, long time. And that's what it's all about, and I would really like to see more of that. And we have a card for Dr. Wright that the students all signed.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
Oh, you want that first? Yeah.
Thank you, RCS. We love Lester from all the students.
Yeah, we think we got everything.
My turn? Yep. Well, everybody's already kind of talked about my part, but I'm gonna reiterate anyway. I'm supposed to talk about the lasting effect or how it has, changed students at Westview. My students in particular, my first graders, they're still talking about Lester. I read a book today and I told them, I said, this is one of Lester's favorite books. It was by Nicole Davies. And they were so excited just for me to read that book because it was Lester's. So, a couple other things that happened. One of my students was so excited. I talked about the visit like a couple of days after just to bring it up. I didn't know it was going to have such a lasting effect. And one of my students said, I said, well, what were you thinking about? How did you feel about the visit and all that? And his name's Gabriel, and he said, I've been thinking and thinking and thinking. And he said, I think that when you go into a grocery store and you smell cookies, that you will be able to write a book about your grandmother. And Lester told that story. Told that story. That's how he came up with the idea for Saturdays and tea cakes. So for my first graders to be listening to that extent and to take that on, and I've had students that I've noticed a change in their writing. They've tried some of the strategies that Lester talked about. And so the enthusiasm is still there in my classroom, and I still see it in the hallway because we've left the peacock things up and all the bulletin boards, and the kids are still talking about those. So it was extremely successful. Probably, I've been doing this a long time too,
Yeah.
Linda.
Yeah.
And
It is.
I've had a lot of authors visit at the different schools I've been at, and this was probably the very most successful. And I think it's because of the participation of the teachers and the people that were behind it, and then the kids, getting the kids that motivated and involved. So I think it's gonna continue. I really think that the students are gonna
So
continue.
how
and I
long
hope
will you
they're-
be keeping the peacocks up? I know
Well,
we haven't been able to get to Westview yet this year, so
You
are
need-
they
yeah,
they're
come on.
going
You got a couple weeks.
We
Yeah.
might
Couple
have
weeks,
to-
okay.
Yeah.
They look a lot like a turkey.
We might make them into turkeys. All right, we'll have to get over there soon. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Linda Morgeson, and if anyone knows me, they know that joyful learning is what I wish for in every classroom throughout our system and everywhere. And I can honestly say that I have witnessed, and I am still witnessing, joyful learning and lots of smiles about Lester Lamanek and what he brought to Westview. So after this event was all said and done, I sat down because Dr. Wright attended, and so I wrote him a note. I emailed him, and at the very end, I said to him, for sure, no doubt about it, hang on, get ready, for there's more to come. And I am here to tell you that there is more to come, because Lester Lamanek has agreed to provide professional development for our teachers and our students. And that is going to begin to happen in November. We have him already booked. We put it on Dr. Wright's credit card, and we're ready to go.
So you told my wife that? She sure got to do it?
Pay the bill.
Stitch Fitch.
But we have have him booked to work on, we gave all of our teachers, readers, our writers are readers, his book. And so we're going to be using that book as our guide, and he is going to work with us on how to be a writer. We are so fortunate for this opportunity. He taught first grade for like 24 years. He has taught college for 20-some years. He is an acclaimed
He has a PhD, that's right.
PhD. He is an acclaimed writer. And so we're here to tell you that this is continuing. And we just have to work on the technology because it's going to be through either Google Meet or Zoom or whatever way we can communicate with them. So thank you for this opportunity of celebrating Westview and our event. Thank you.
Thank you, Smith.
Mr. Virgil Daniels, who was on the committee, who came in
Yes,
a
Mr.
little
Daniels,
late as
absolutely.
well.
Absolutely.
Did you want to say something
Yeah.
quickly?
So we wanted to involve the students as much as we could into what we were doing. So we decided that we would come together and let the kids put their own spin on it. And so every bulletin board, and Dr. Ray, you were there.
Oh, yes, sir.
So I think Jamie was there too.
Oh, yeah.
So every bulletin board is full. My class did a peacock. Mrs. Green made our peacock head. Then my class and Mrs. Allen's class made all the feathers. We also made the bees for the front hall, and we made the feathers for the front hall. So we just wanted to involve the kids, and we read all the books so they knew all about them by the time you got there.
So we have questions, if you all don't
Oh,
mind,
sure,
from our esteemed trustees and or comments.
No.
I don't know if I have a question, but thank you. The effort and the time that what's behind this is all of you guys putting this together. I remember being a child and going to young authors conferences and meeting authors, and it's memorable. I still remember, so you've created a lasting memory for students, so thank you.
How did it go about getting started? Like, obviously it was brainstormed and came up with, but how did it all get rolling and
Initially in the spring,
hint to other schools that want to try something like this?
in the spring, we were working on some larger, like big picture ideas on how to improve our literacy. We've implemented a 3-hour continuous literacy block in most of our grades to try and maximize the instructional time. And so the idea of having like an author visit and some related student experiences to try and tie in both like real excitement, but then also some real professional development for teachers to use was kind of the idea. And I know Linda Morgeson talked to me a lot about it last spring, and Cheryl Searles as well, and I'm sure others too in the spring. But that's kind of
We wrote a grant that you guys might have remembered, but
Yes.
we didn't get in. Maybe next year.
With that, if I could say, because she may not want me to, but I'm going to, because Linda believed in this so much, she's awarded by being selected the Richmond Community Schools Teacher of the Year. She is awarded by that money to contribute back to the school or her classroom. She believed in it this much, she used that money to help provide this incentive, and she went above and beyond that because she also contributed personal funds because she believed in it that much as well. So I commend her for that, because I know that this may not have been able to happen without those contributions. So kudos.
And the other, she did a lot with that, and the other money, our PTO really pitched in.
Yes.
And
PTO.
they were very helpful. They took it.
generous.
They also provided us lunch. It was just a great day.
Yes.
I would simply just like to echo and piggyback on what has been referenced upon walking into Westview, not only on October 10th, but also even earlier today when I walked in. The synergy that's found there at Westview, as well as found throughout our corporation and all of our schoolhouses, is just it's electrifying. And as with your reference, bringing literacy to life, not only with this experience, you were able to do that, but you were also able to capture that professional learning community ideal that we're all striving for, because it was a collective, it was a collaborative of faculty, staff, students, and also stakeholders, and those that were brought in to volunteer. Mrs. Bergdahl, with regard to her bulletin board, she walked me over, I think 186 feathers of some sort that she had to individually and single-handedly staple and tape and paste onto the board, along with all of the other amazing ornaments and just, it was the Hershey kisses in the boxes, the feathers that went along with the bookmarks, just again remarkable. That memorable moment is something that the entire Westview community will never forget. Growing up there in the 80s here in the Rose City, the bookmobile was something that was something we look forward to. We'd stop everything we were doing between that and the ice cream truck. We would stop everything we were doing there in the neighborhood and look out for it. And literacy was brought into our neighborhoods, literally, which you all did. Again, you are to be commended and for bringing Mr. Lamney back, the professional development, sitting in on the session, the tips and the instructional best practices that he was passing on to teachers as to how to preface and get our young learners going with writing. Tips about don't establish the title of the book until at the end of the story. And so it just again, kudos, truly amazing, and I'm so very pleased, excited, appreciative, and thankful.
I just have one more thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
We've talked a lot about the peacocks and the peacock feathers. So he wrote 2 books. 3 Hens and a Peacock is one. And then he wrote a sequel, 3 Hens, a Peacock, and an Enormous Egg. And the kids were all asking him, are you going to write another one? And he said, well, maybe, we'll see. But so that's where the peacock all came from. So yes, we are peacock blessed at
President Stoltz and trustees, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Morganson, if Mrs. Morganson doesn't mind rejoining us here at the podium. Earlier this summer, we celebrated our Principal of the Year within our corporation, and we had a very special guest join us earlier this summer to present to our Principal of the Year a Senator's Award. And we now have Mr. Jeff Rotz, our Senator in the state of Indiana. Mr. Senator Rotz is back to present to our Teacher of the Year from 22-23.
No, it's fine, I'll hang on to it, thanks. Thank you so much, board and everybody in attendance. What a perfect day to come and be able to watch the creativity and what's happening on the ground floor. I know we spent a lot of time this last session on literacy, but the work is done here at the ground, and the creativity piece of it, I don't know about the rest of everybody else, but I don't have what it takes to do that kind of thing. So thank you so much, and to all of you who participated in that. That's an incredible opportunity to sow into kids' lives and help them be successful for the rest of their lives. Because as you all know, as we all know, literacy is incredibly important. And so, but that's not why I'm here today. I read it in the paper this morning, which is cool. It was really intriguing to come this evening and be able to hear it from the ground floor as well. So thank you for that effort. So Linda, you've had quite a career, it sounds like. And so you taught for 39 years and then retired, participated at the board level for 8 years. Now you came back. And how many years?
Was at IU East for about 12 years.
Where did you find time for all that? You're not that old.
If you only knew.
Well,
I have to put my face on every morning.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to. But anyway, it's incredible. And so in recognition for Teacher of the Year, it doesn't recognize everything you've done for kids over the years and students. I've used that way both at the higher ed level And the seeds you've sown, you've got to watch blossom over the years. And I'm certain you see kids out in the community all the time.
There's one here right now.
That's awesome. The rewards are great for sure. But hats off to you. And this certificate is incredibly minuscule compared to the lives that you've touched and the time that you've put into it. But I certainly want to share it anyway. So it's just a simple recognition of being Teacher of the Year. As a member of the Indiana General Assembly, I'd like to acknowledge your commitment and education of young people and to recognize the Everson Richmond Community Schools with best wishes for your continued success. And that goes for everybody that does the work at the ground level every day. We're certainly grateful for that and live it, but I don't feel this is adequate, but I'm humbled and it's all that I have.
Some other cameras over here. Got a paparazzi here. Well, now that we've sufficiently embarrassed you, Mrs. Morris, we'll let you have a seat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Senator Rice. Thank you.
We have another celebration. Dr. Wright.
Yes. As folks are filing out here. President Stoltz, trustees, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazel-Baker rejoin us.
All right, so we have our Boston Run winners. Who here has participated in Boston Run? Pete? You didn't do Boston Run?
I'm the only one.
Kim?
I had a kid last year.
All right.
I won't tell you how far
Eva,
behind
you
I was.
Good. All right, well, we have 4 students. Well, Merritt Earps just had to leave. He had a football game at 6:30, so he had to leave just a few seconds ago. So I do have a photo of him, but we're going to celebrate Ryan. Come on up here. Morgan, can you come up here? And also Kira. Can you come up here as well? So and I want you guys to stand. The camera is not working tonight, so I'm going to have you guys just stand here and look at those 2 little, looks like eyes, and wave at people at home.
All eyes on
Wave.
you.
Just wait for a second.
Wally, look at Wally.
All right, and now you can turn around and talk to them.
All right. So each of you were the winners, is that right?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So let's see your I just won the Boston Run look. What's your face look like? Okay. Okay, pretty surprised and shock. All right. We should have gotten this one.
Oh yeah, I think she got it.
All right. So were you nervous? Was it scary? No? Just no big deal for awesome runners like you?
I was really nervous even during practice time.
I can imagine. Yeah, like butterflies in your stomach type thing. All right.
So, as much as we're proud of you guys, I'm sure your parents and guardians are pretty proud of you too. Did you bring anybody with you guys tonight? You want to introduce them maybe?
How about you first, young El Loriaga? Who did you bring with you tonight, sir?
What was that?
My dad.
Okay.
And my mom and my sister and my grandma and grandpa and my great grandpa Mike.
All right. And so some of us here on the dais went to school with your father, and we recall and remember just how fast he was. We had a nickname for him back in the 90s. My question to you is, can you beat your father in a foot race?
Oh, I guarantee you can't now.
I don't know.
Would
What
you
do
like to
think?
go
You think
try?
you can beat your dad? You think you can? Can you beat your sister?
All right.
I love it. I love the confidence. So share with us, young lady, what did it feel like when you were running in front of all your peers, all your classmates, the entire school, other schools? What was it like to be out there running? Did you find yourself getting short of breath, or how did you maintain to be victorious?
Well, I kind of just kept on doing it. I really struggled breathing though.
Okay.
It really hurt.
Yeah. But you pushed through. You pushed through to victory, to the win. What was your most exciting and exhilarating aspect and experience? And share your name again.
Kira Burns.
Yes. And so what was your most exciting moment in the race?
Whenever I got close to the finish line.
So you were ready to be done with it? Did you train? Did you train before? Did you run around your neighborhood or go to some local track and field? Yeah. Did you have to eat right? Did all three of you have to eat right and maybe cut back on sugar and sweets and snacks? Yeah.
On Wednesday night, I ate spaghetti.
Okay. You got your carbohydrates in. There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Who did you guys bring with you? You two.
Well, I brought my mom and grandma.
Okay.
All right.
Did you bring anyone with you?
My mom and my grandma.
Okay.
Okay, you want to point them out? Okay. That's what it's all about.
Congratulations, you three.
And then Merritt,
Quite a
who was
feat.
here for fourth grade, he won last year as a third grader too.
Yeah, okay, he's a two-time back-to-back, is that right? Yeah, fast young fella. And I think Mr. Baker, our chief of elementary education.
So Kira, you were in the first race, right? You were in the first race. So we had three talented runners here, but if you didn't get to see the race, Kira literally was dominating her race and stopped. She thought the race was over and then went on a little bit more, then stopped again, and then realized she had another lap to go and still smoked the field by stopping twice. So
You were just letting
it
them
was pretty
catch up,
crazy. It was
right?
awesome. Yeah. Let them catch up. Is that what you were doing? So it was the very first race. I don't think she knew she was really out in front by a large distance, and she was probably hoping she was done.
And we told you to go out for cross country next year.
Yeah.
Soccer. Try something else too.
You all plan to run cross country in high school and junior high and middle school? Yeah. How are your grades? Are your grades just as good as your running or better? About the same? Yeah. About the same? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
What schools are you guys from?
Charles. I'm from Hibbard.
Charles.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And where's Merritt from?
Merritt's from Hibbard.
Okay. All right. Great job, you
Congratulations.
guys.
Congratulations.
All right. Love it. Okay, so highlights and happenings. We're moving on to 3.01. Superintendent, right?
President Stoll's trustees for highlights and happenings, myself and our Central Office Cabinet team will share what we have been up to. And a brief highlight that I would like to share is that a few weeks ago I was invited back to serve as a panelist at the annual Meridian Health Services Speaker Series, together with Mayor David Snow, Sheriff Randy Redder, Ms. Lisa Suttle from Meridian Health Services, Rick Duncan, and Doug Himmerling. We all were able to educate our Richmond community on our concerted efforts to prevent suicide and treat suicidal ideation. For those that may not know, in 2020, the Indiana Youth Institute reported that the percentage of Hoosier middle and high school students who considered attempting suicide ranged from a low of 11.8% to a high of 19.3%. Indiana's suicide rate has been higher than the national rate since 2000, and its rate in 2017 was the highest suicide rate observed in Indiana in 5 decades. In short, we have for some time found it challenging to treat suicide as well as suicide ideation with our school-age children. These are students that have experienced trauma, depression, like never before. And together with the Richmond Community Schools, one of our community partners, we are doing what we can to meet students where they are, provide necessary treatment, support, love, and listening skill sets to help them deal and cope with some of the challenging moments in their lives. And so with that, I appreciated the invite. The keynote speaker of the evening, the gentleman was very talented keynote. And I need to, that's why I need glasses. Forgive me. Kevin Hines. Mr. Kevin Hines was a survivor. He leapt from the Golden Gate Bridge there in San Francisco and lived to tell the tale. And of what he shared on that day to the adults as well as the many students that were present was what we share on a daily basis, which is there's so much joy in life and trying to solve temporary problems with permanent solutions. There's never the answer. And so I just like to just take a moment to highlight the fact that it's a challenge, but we're working hard to meet that challenge, and we're game for the challenge. So I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Brent Baker to share his highlight for the evening. Mr. Baker.
All right, so we continue to be happy with our AI reading platform, Amira. Once the RCS network is upgraded, our K-4 students will use AI technology through Amira to improve reading proficiency. We also had a successful RCS Title I night last week, and I want to thank Mr. Steve Jones, the principal of Charles Elementary, for his hard work in putting this event together.
Mark Fowler, Chief of Secondary Education.
Yeah, Dr. Wright, President Stolt, trustees. I'm gonna save a highlight for later, but the happenings, we welcomed Mr. Kevin Honeycutt back to Richmond Community Schools today. So he started at the high school at 9 a.m. And his theme for our students was build your own legacy. And so he met with the high school today in the Tiernan Center. Afterwards, met with some student groups. Right after that, we headed to Dennis Middle School. Hibbard also joined at Dennis as well. We did a 7th grade presentation, and then we did an 8th grade presentation as well. Tomorrow, he will be at Test, and he'll be joined by some Logos students at Test. And he'll do the same presentation, age appropriate, obviously, and then he'll meet with some students there as well. So he's been received very, very well by our students and staff, and has done a wonderful job. And so we're very, very thankful for the opportunity to have him.
And trustees, you already may recall, for those that were in attendance at the welcome back experience, Mr. Honeycutt really drove home the message in that keynote with our faculty, staff, and stakeholders that were present. So, Mrs. Markwood will now join the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. So CPI training wrapped up today for the fall semester, so I wanted to highlight the work of Vicki Sane, Michael French, and Zach Smith for the work that they put in for training our support staff and our teachers. It takes time for them to go and be trained and then come back and bring that training for our staff. So I want to highlight the work that they provide to our staff. And then my happening is Mr. Baker and I submitted a competitive Science of Reading grant through the Indiana Department of Education. If awarded, we could receive up to $450,000 to support the implementation of Science of Reading through curricular materials, professional development, and coaching.
So when will we find out if we get that?
Hopefully the next couple weeks.
Okay.
And now our Chief of Human Resources and Business Finance, Mrs. Jamie Bolzer.
Thank you. So the highlight is we were able to successfully renew our insurance. That begins on November 1st, so that's kind of a highlight and a happening, because the happening part of it is the HR side has been very busy getting ready for that open enrollment side. It was a very successful renewal. With the renewal rates, we are happy to announce that the Executive Insurance Committee voted to keep the employee rates the same, so those will not have a change, as there was no change this last year as well. We were also able to add some additional benefits. The telemedicine side of SwiftMD is also offering some mental health treatment aspects. So our staff, we're going to begin rolling out information to our staff that for additional counseling sessions per episode will be available to them for any mental health concerns. And our pharmacy benefit manager is introducing 2 new programs that will benefit our plan participants as well. On-Track Diabetes Management, which is a voluntary program, will work with individuals and review the patient's medication and treatment plans for diabetes. Benefits will include new monitors, prescription reviews, coaching, holistic approach, diet, exercise, any wellness guidance, and ongoing resource access. The trust also added a genomic program to be available to employees. The intent of this voluntary program is to make genetic tests available through TrueRx to determine which medicine will work for an individual. It is hopeful that this will take the guesswork out of prescribing mental health, heart health, and other pain management medications.
Thank you. Now our Chief of Operations, Mrs. Karen Scout.
Yes, so some highlights that we've had lately. We did provide 170 flu shots to our staff last week, or the first week of October, when our Meridian nursing staff was out in the building at each of our buildings offering the ability to get flu shots. Our staff is welcome to make appointments at the RHS clinic if anyone did not take advantage of that opportunity. And it is a free service for our employees. So we encourage them to make the call and come in if they should like anything. Another positive thing is that clinic is almost completely fully functional with nurse practitioner services. So that will actually ramp up just following fall break. Our nurse practitioner is here, but she's been getting to know our district a little bit, and we've been slowly rolling in her appointments so that she's been able to do some of that, getting to know our students, getting to know our buildings, and things like that. So that's an exciting thing that we'll have at the RHS clinic for our staff and our students. The other really fun thing that we have begun this month is Discovery Kitchens out in the elementary school. So Chartwells provides what looks like a little bit of a Food Network setup, and they teach the kids a recipe and then they let them try it. So every kid gets to taste test what they've made, and then they can take that home because it's always something easy. It's always something that they can do that is easily taken home to do. So that's super fun, and they learn about new foods. It helps things in the cafeterias. They get to try new things. They're more willing because they participate in that. The other really fun thing is that at the high school, they have introduced something called Global Eats, and they've started this month with Italian. Next month, we move on to Chinese. And they are going to do, in one of the lines, they will rotate in different parts of the world and international foods into the Create area. So the kids love it. It is becoming rapidly one of the most popular lines. And it is something that's extremely popular throughout Chartwell's schools. And so we look forward to that expanding and broadening. And then as far as a happening, if you have not noticed, we have had some interesting and very adventurous things happening out in the parking lot right here between the high school and the administration building. So we did have a water main break this week. I just want to say kudos to a maintenance crew that loaded up their trucks with barricades, came out and waited in the water with me while we waited on the water company and their crew to come out and help us make sure that that happened. So a huge thank you to Indian American Water. They have some work to do next week to finish it up. So you will see those barricades for a little bit longer, but we're really glad that we were able to get that under control quickly, and everybody, it didn't affect anything in the buildings. Here there was a little bit, but it was overnight, so we are very grateful for that. So everybody involved, huge thank you, and it was really nice to be able to just get back to business next day.
Great. I've got a quick question. So the Global Eats, when we were at the National School Board Association, I think, I don't remember, Brad and Pete, I think maybe you guys sampled those as well. We got to sample that from Chartwells, and they were excellent. All of the different, they had an Indian option that I particularly liked, so hopefully we'll get to that one also. Had they said like what the spectrum
they're working
is,
on that now, so they kind of have the first couple of months ready, and then they're kind of working on that now. So what they'll do, what they've done last year, they taste tested a few of the countries in just once at a time.
Right.
So like the orange chicken they tested last year about winter time, and it became so hot that they serve it on the line all the time.
Okay.
So they're actually going to do different things in the Chinese menu too, because it was so popular. So I don't know what countries they are yet, but he's working on all that now, so we can push that
And
out
are
to
they
you later.
also, they had attractive signage along with things, so hopefully they're not holding out on us with the signage. 'Cause
They're
it was
not,
really cute
yeah, they
to
do have really good
promote what they
signage. The
were.
one thing is that we do have some limitations, the way that our cafeteria is currently set up, and we are working on that. We are actually trying to save some money so that we can work on a cafeteria reno soon. But right now there's just a lot of, there's a lot in that really small space. And so, yeah, they have it, they're carefully planning it, but it has to have the space to do it, so we're working on that too. Yeah.
And lastly, we will ask that Mrs. Bridget Hazelbaker rejoin us here at the podium for her highlight and happening. Mrs. Hazelbaker, thank you, ma'am, for coming back up.
Mine was short, but the magical night of math, magical world of math. I wanted to again thank Steve Jones for coordinating that. We had a great turnout. I think the turnout could have been a little more just because we had to redo the day because of the rain the previous week. But we had some great community partners that came out to that event. And we had the boys basketball team also there to help clean up, and food trucks, and it was a great night. So Magician was a fun time as well. So I'm looking forward to planning that event again also for next October.
And thank you so much, Mr. Jones. We appreciate you, sir, for all your efforts as always. Just the contributions you make are second to none. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, other discussion? So I believe the three of us visited Dennis between now and the last time we met. Is that right?
Yes, we
I
did.
don't think, yes. I mean, I know we visited Dennis, but I was just trying to think of that because it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it would have been, yeah. So did you want to share out on some of those experiences or?
Sure. I visited, or I helped out in a classroom, a career and college readiness class, which was really nice to see, you know, the push for college, but also the push for careers. So the day that I was there, discussion of trades and different occupations, and some, I think that what she shared was the most well-paid trade position now is people who work on elevators, the mechanics of elevators. So just some different types of trade jobs that, you know, students may not have heard of. And I mean, I didn't think about, so it was great. Great visit.
So I got to help Ms. Cooper put some items together. I don't really want to say what it is because I'm not sure at what stage of that process was, but I got to do a lot of unboxing. It was actually good. It was my workout for the day. So just sort of help them organize, get a little sweaty and, you know, a little sweat equity to help them out. And put together some things for her staff. So,
and I think we were all impressed. Mrs. Cooper has done an excellent job of revitalizing the aesthetics inside the building there at Dennis. Has it looking great.
It looks amazing.
We were very impressed from the last time we had visited, and she was talking about, you know, what was, you know, the vision, and just to see that come to fruition was very impressive. So kudos, yeah, it was really fun. And then I got to be in with the PE. We were doing roller skating, so let's just say I went roller skating, so that was fun. Didn't fall down, which was notable, but otherwise I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't done this in a while. I'm glad that we have that opportunity for our students, really. I thought that was really cool. They rent a whole bunch of skates, and then the kids get to do that roller skating unit, so that was a lot of fun. Yeah. Oh yeah.
The courage to get out there.
Oh, yes. All right, so moving on to 4.01, we have public commentary. Bridget, we have some people signed up here.
We have 4
Okay.
of this main but first up will be David Carpenter.
All right.
Good evening, everybody.
Before you start, I'm going to go ahead. We've just got some guidelines that I'll share with you, as well as everyone else. For those who wish to comment at this evening's board meeting, the maximum time to speak is 5 minutes. Please keep your comments fact-based and within the time permitted. Comments are not to be personally directed or abusive. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process, which is available in policy 8130. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, but you will receive a personal follow-up email from the board president. Thank you.
Thank you. So, 2 things. Number 1, my first question is, when I go online, and by the way, I'm also a mayor candidate for the election this year, and so when I see that there's concerned parents about their children being bullied in school, my question is, what steps is this board taking to address that? And secondly, from speaking to some teachers outside, and I see from my understanding that there's kind of a suppression of the freedom of speech for allowing the teachers to speak of things that's happening within their classrooms, conveying to members of the public, like parents. What way is the school board going to work on the transparency so that way a teacher could be allowed to freely speak and express what's happening within their classrooms to help address parents' concerns of what is happening with their children in the school system? And that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garfield.
Next we have Kristen Jones.
Good evening. First of all, I'm going to say I do not speak well in front of adults. Give me kids all day long and I'm good. But the first thing I wanted to do is highlight something that's in our EL department. And we know that we have gotten a lot of new EL students this school year. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about our interpreters. And I asked them to give me some rough numbers. And they've spent time with over 160 different parents over conference day, just in that one day. And I think that that's definitely commendable because they had to not only meet with teachers to find out information to share with families, as well as be prepared to answer any questions that those families might have. And sometimes it then took another phone call after they got information. And we only have 5 interpreters doing this. So I think it definitely is commendable the amount of time that they put into their job, and I just wanted you all to know that. And the second one is that I'm currently right now doing my EL certification, and I got a grant through the IDOE, it's the ITEL grant, and I'm going through Goshen College. Well, I got an assignment that I had to look at our district dashboard through the IDOE. I couldn't figure it out. And so Mr. Baker spent time with me just really diving into the data and helping me understand the data and even say, well, this is a different way to look at something, and go into Tide and go into some other things that I wouldn't have had access to help me with my assignment. And I just thought that it was really nice of somebody from central office just helping me with an assignment. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Jones.
you. All right, next
we have Steve Jones.
First of all, Mr. Baker, thank you for making our house a little happier. For those of you who don't know, and some of you at the table know, I saw how much fun Dr. Wright was having on a daily basis. So I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go back to school, work on that next degree, and work towards my superintendent's license. So he and I had a great conversation the other day, and one of the things that I kind of came to the conclusion of is that right now we are suffering from a cultural problem in our community. And we've got, and I say collectively, we've got to get it figured out and come up with something that's a little bit more in a positive sense. Because I look at, I was not in on a lot of conversations, but like I don't like the fact that our student section is now in the end zone. I hate that because we essentially have taken the student section out of the game. And I would love to get them back in next to the band. Little things like that. The fact that like the middle school kids, and I know we're recommended a brand new principal at Test, which I have no doubt she's gonna get things turned around. She is amazing, so Laura, good luck. But I look at, our middle school issue was that we have kids that don't know how to behave responsibly at a football game. And instead of saying, hey, let's teach them how to do it, we just like, hey, you guys are out. So now we have kids that are in 8th grade that are gonna go to the high school and not know what a student section or how to work in a student section, how to make it great. Because we wanna provide, we're already providing learning experiences, but the overall experiences, school experiences, I think we're missing the boat. And I'm coming to you guys because we gotta figure out as a whole, how do we get this turned around? And like I said, Dr. Wright and I, and one of the things I learned last night in my class was that we are gonna have a service project that I have to do. And I think that's gonna be a perfect thing is let's figure out a way that we can get this ship righted and get things turned around and because I know that, and I didn't grow up here, probably could have. I mean, my dad worked at a steel mill. You know, I grew up in the, you know, up in the region, so I could have been a Richmond kid. And I know this was, I mean, the community was amazing. I mean, I've heard all the, I mean, the glory days stories. We're not that far removed. And like I said, I'm going to be looking to all you guys to see how can we get this turned around. And you guys are out in the community. You see a lot of people. We see a lot of people. You know, Mr. Baker's already, I mean, he's already, you know, setting the tone with all the elementary principals. Like, hey, we're getting this turned around. So I think we can do it, but we can't do it. We can't be those independent contractors. We got to do it as a whole. So that's why I'm coming to you guys is let's start developing that plan and let's get that cultural issue turned around. And I think we'll see that, you know, kind of seep into the schools. Because right now, I mean, we're getting it done in most of our schools. It's just not getting home. And we got to get the home involved. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I said, I would love to see the student section back in to where it's like, hey, because our football team's struggling and they don't get past the 50 a lot. So it's saying, I just look at like the cheerleaders go over there, the student section, they one cheer, the student section goes crazy, and the cheerleaders go back to the stands where the adults aren't really cheering, unfortunately. I mean, we said I wouldn't jump around play, so there's like 3 of us that jump around. So it's, we gotta get, like I said, we just gotta get this cultural thing fixed. And so I'm gonna kind of work with Dr. Wright. I'll be working with him a lot over the next 2 years to try and figure out that service project and say, hey, what can we do to get this turned around? That's it. I appreciate your time. You guys are amazing. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. All right, next.
And last, we have Nathan Metzer.
Alright, good evening. So at the last meeting in the auditorium a little while ago, there was a lot of feelings and a lot of people. And you don't come to something like that, and that many people don't come to something like that unless they really, really care. After a full day of work, you know, you're exhausted, there's nothing you want to do more than just go home. And to stay for multiple hours after that and just sit there, you can tell that, you know, the teachers in this district and the community members and the adults that were there really deeply cared. And I found myself pretty surprised. You know, I've been to a lot of, you know, similar settings. I found myself very surprised by the lack of speakers. There was very few people who were willing to speak in front of the board and in front of the superintendent. And I don't know exactly why that is, but I worry that that's because of a pervasive fear of retaliation. So that, of course, is a deeply destructive force for any sort of democratic deliberation. And I think it's the school board's responsibility to make sure that the teachers feel as safe as possible speaking in a public forum like this, as long as they're doing it responsibly. And so, you know, partially because of that, I felt as a community member moved to speak tonight. Just to say that I'm deeply disturbed to hear that a highly qualified, highly experienced teacher has been removed from the classroom for non-educational reasons. At a time when the best we can hope for is a sub, or maybe just all the kids get sent to the auditorium, it strikes me that it is unthinkable to remove a teacher in that manner. I think we should call it what it is. It's an act of educational neglect, and the students deserve better. Thank you for your time.
All right, is that all of them? Okay, thank you so much. Moving on now, we have our consent items before us. Dr. Ray.
President Stoltz, trustees, I come before you this evening to ask for approval of consent items 5.01 through 5.05, as well as the addendum associated with 5.02 human resources.
I move that we approve 5.01 through 5.05, including the addendum on our desk.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. All right, next for our action items,
President Stoltz, if I may, I apologize. Trustees, if you all don't mind with your most recent approval of the human resources report Superintendent, I want to ask that Mr. Mark Fowler, our Chief of Secondary Education, approach and the dais with special acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ms. Brazel, would you mind joining me up front here? So as I mentioned earlier, I was skipping or delaying my highlight, and Ms. Brazel is the highlight. And so we're super excited. The test community, staff, students, parents are so excited to welcome Ms. Brazel to lead Test Intermediate. I had the awesome privilege of being there when we announced, and there was an audible like, yes. Teacher actually stepped out and said, I have to call my mom and tell her that this is actually happening. We had a staff member leaving that said this is a big win for tests. So super, super excited for Laura. She has served in a number of capacities at Richmond High School. But one thing I know about her is her loyalty to Richmond Community Schools, her loyalty to the community, to her staff. She made the comment to me that, you know, you come for the job and you stay for the people, and you stay because of the people. And she has done that. She has surrounded herself with wonderful people, and wonderful people are around her because that's exactly what she is. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit about Test, and you had a chance to meet the staff.
Yeah, I went over yesterday and talked to them after school. I'm just really excited to go there. I think it's a really neat school, and every school community is unique, so I look forward to getting to know them. I spent my first year of teaching at 7th and 8th grade. I taught 7th and 8th graders. And then after that, I moved states, and I ended up in a high school, and that's where I have been for the last 22 years. So I have to learn all about middle school. I told the staff it's going to be their job to teach me. I'm going to give myself about 2 months to become middle school proficient, and then we'll get it all together. So I'm just really excited and thankful. It was a very hard decision to leave RHS. I am proud of the work that I've done there, and I really love the people I work with, but I'm super excited for this chance.
Questions, comments for Mrs. Brazel?
No, as a former Test Tiger, you're gonna have to get some purple in your wardrobe. All right, just so you know, heads up. No,
it's a great
it's
commute.
Yeah, I know, my commute just got awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
She's my neighbor.
That's right. Just a walk up the block.
No, we're excited for you, definitely.
And definitely no doubts that you're going to do a great job.
Well, thank you for your faith in me.
Absolutely. Confidence is extremely high, and you will have all the supports that you need, all the resources. The Richmond High School family will always be your family, and they are truly excited for you. It's a bittersweet experience, but the new chapter that you're going to establish there at Test and bringing such brilliance is going to be just what we need. So congratulations, Mrs. Brazel.
Yeah.
I would also just like to say, I'm sorry, a big shout out to Miss Ashley Gerard and Mr. Dehart and Mr. Dykes for the wonderful job that they've done leading Tests during this transition. They've done a wonderful job.
I should have said, I'd just like to thank her for stepping up and getting out of her, I hate to say comfort zone, but I mean, that's a new challenge, and I'm sure you'll hit a home run, but it's super appreciative that you will do that.
Yeah.
All right. So next we'll be moving on to our action items, and we have 6.01 donations. I believe Mrs. Bolser, you're going to be taking us through those.
Included, you'll find 10 donations received by Richmond Community Schools. We are asking for your acceptance from Cummins Electric for the athletic program in the amount of $500, Indiana Farm Bureau for the athletic program in the amount of $500, Dre Investment LLC to the athletic program for $9,500, Stoltz Family Dentistry to the athletic program for $500, B&F Plastics to the athletic program for $3,000, McGowan Insurance to the athletic program for $750, Justin Scheiben to the athletic program for $3,000, Merchants Bank of Indiana to RHS Choir for $2,500, Miriam Benner, Charles Benner, and Kristen Benner to RHS Construction Class for $330, and Angela Criswell to RHS Orchestra for $100, totaling $20,680.
Great. Do we have a motion to accept these donations?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
It's an overwhelming thank you. I mean, every time that we get to this portion of the board meeting, you're just overwhelmed by the generosity and support of our community. And, you know, we had some speakers tonight talk about, you know, the core of the community, that it's still alive and well. It's very evident.
Ron, I have a quick question. Since I'm on this list, do I need to recuse myself, or is that not a?
Since you what?
I'm on the list. I didn't know if I need to recuse myself from.
No, we can take your money and you can vote.
Okay.
You can vote to allow your money to
I
be
can
taken.
vote. Well, again, I don't want it to be a conflict of interest anyway. Okay, well, that was my question. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. All right. So next we have 6.02. I believe that's Mrs. Bolster as well.
It is, thank you. In front of you, I have an agreement for professional services with Frontline. Frontline Education is a leading provider of school administration software built exclusively for K-12 districts. The software enables a more proactive and manageable approach for absence and time management. Frontline absence and time application provides a unified solution allowing districts to manage employee absences and quickly find qualified substitutes to support student learning, accurately track employee time, to monitor labor costs and ensure compliance, gain real-time visibility, and provide benchmark data for comparable to national, state, and regional key performance indicators. Frontline time and attendance application enables districts to effectively and accurately manage and report on employee time to improve accountability, save time, keep labor costs under control, gain real-time visibility into who is working in their schools, and ensure compliance with labor laws. Currently, the absence management system utilized is manual, relying on paper-based systems. This approach is very time-consuming, requiring a significant amount of manual data entry. By utilizing an application geared specifically for K-12 schools, it will enhance accuracy, accessibility, efficiency, and data analysis while ensuring compliance and security. Employees and administrators will have access to real-time data and leave app balances. The implementation process per Frontline is approximately 8 to 12 weeks. We began communication with our building leaders and will continue to communicate and eventually train when the time comes. We are looking forward to sending out the message that we will no longer require 2 to 3 forms to request an absence. And yes, this does include the infamous green sheet. So in front of you is your consideration for the use of Frontline services. I think it's also important to mention that this is really an extension. We do currently use Frontline, as they are very widely known throughout the country in software management. We currently use, they're the front side of our sub-tracking portal. So this is extending what we're able to do. They do have a more complete onboarding process. What we're trying to do is bite off what we can chew at the moment and chew it and get the efficiency in place. So in front of you is the recommendation for the agreement with Frontline.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Bolster. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, and are there questions or comments?
I just have one comment. So I know, obviously, we were talking about this a little bit, but I know we might be a few years out, but I would personally push us to, go that route. I just know how beneficial it is. I've mentioned this is what I do for a living, is implement software and live in the HRS world. So, as I do see this as a stepping stone, I think it's going to help a lot. It's going to open us up to some other efficiencies, and hopefully I would like us to see us go into more of that HCM space. I know the financial piece is extremely complex, and that doesn't necessarily live within an HR platform all of the time, but like I said, hopefully this help support your team, so then they can start thinking outside of the box, because I know they're probably inundated.
We live outside the box with our team in the last 15 months, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
We actually have upgraded the CompuTrol web-based program that was a 1980s DOS-based system.
Literally.
We have that updated here recently. So this allows that connector piece. I have reached out recently because I believe in an all-encompassing umbrella platform. Our current system does not have that. They are working on that. And as Ms. Pickering mentioned, that it's in development. That to me means maybe on the horizon, maybe a couple years. But what I like about this is a connector piece that will, oftentimes I think some people think a report or analysis is a simple push of the button. That's not the case. Sometimes it's weeks, hours, upon hours and hours. For this though, what we're doing is taking some of those processes where it can be a press of a button to help with the streamline of paying substitutes, tracking for substitutes, the time management component for absence tracking, that component as well. When I arrived there, we are heavily reliant on killing a lot of trees here. One of the things I mentioned was Alex Hazelbaker, our Director of Technology. He reported that in the month of September alone, that our district printed 1.3 million copies. While obviously those go out to all of our buildings and our classrooms, there's a lot of paper and the need for those. I feel like half of those land on my desk at some point through the month. The onboarding process alone, to your point, is a thick paper stack. And I think in 2023, we have to begin to work towards fixing that. But in able to work towards streamlining, we are trying to find the thing that could help outreach the efficiencies the most, to be able to make the time to continue to track down that course.
Yeah.
So,
and I know looking at the frontline data, it interfaces with a lot of the other providers, so that is just very promising. It just allows other options, whatever direction.
To your point, we integrated with, we were previously on Skyward Finance in my previous district. We too integrated with Frontline, so multiple,
Mrs. Bowser, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I know I've heard it since arriving in this role and coming back home, but did I hear you correctly? Did you say that the infamous green slip?
Right.
You said that's going.
I feel like I promised Mr. Lee that
so we're
several
dissolving.
months ago, right?
And so while our while our community may not understand what you just said there, our faculty staff, as well as
our building level secretaries and principals. I don't know if we have any left in here. I took them recently to a professional development, all of our building level secretaries, and just through that process of driving down together and spending that day together, I asked them, what is something that you spend a considerable amount of your time on? And you could see the tiredness on their face. I mean, they are in the hamster wheel with us, and they're beyond the ground level. And they said, absence management and sub-tracking reports. They said those are overwhelming because they're all due at a period when they can't say to the child that's sick or to the other occurrence that's right in emergent form in front of them. They can't say, please wait, I've got to go through this stack of green sheets. I've got to do this. So that's where it kind of started saying to me, this needs to prioritize up. And hearing their needs, and almost, I wouldn't classify them as pleas for help, but I feel like it was quickly approaching that.
I would just like to say I have used Frontline in my previous district in California, and to Ms. Bolser's point, it was a game changer for us. There are so many things you can do. Staff members can upload lesson plans into Frontline, so there's no more of the, well, I didn't get the sub-plans. You can set parameters on who can cover what based on credentials. My secretary went from the first 45 minutes each morning trying to fill classes to 10 minutes because everything was put into Frontline ahead of time. And I think it's a wonderful, it changed the way we did substitute tracking. It changed the way we did lesson plans. It just removed a huge boulder out of that area where we were able to start being strategic about things rather than reacting. So as someone who's used a fully implemented app where teachers can request time, it was wonderful.
All right.
It was great.
Thank you guys for some of the background. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have just some concerns. It's another $15,500 per year. I mean, coming from a manufacturing background, if we have 4 pieces of paper, I would say we should work on simplifying our system before we maybe go buy another system. And I think that's kind of the lean philosophy where you look at what you're doing, you work, and maybe this is the answer that I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not a good program. I just, we just get these shiny new, almost every meeting we have a new program we're purchasing. And I'm kind of, so who's gonna do all this stuff? I don't know. Someone's gonna run this front line now. And maybe everybody's trained and able to do it. But at some point, we need to kind of, look at how we just seem to be creating more work in an effort to reduce the work.
Can I speak a little bit to that? Because this has been in process for an extremely long time here. So when we transitioned away from Kelly Services for our sub-platform, we went with Frontline because they had these abilities to make things happen for us that we hadn't had before. We had to get infrastructure to make that happen. We couldn't do that for reasons of finance and technology infrastructure until this year when we went with the updated CompuTrol platform, which is web-based. With that platform, the work you're talking about is actually less for an individual who currently does that work. Having done it myself and having done it for the last 13 years, this is something that will dramatically reduce about 12 individuals alone, plus all of their supervisors, daily work. And I can tell you that with absolute no question, this is what it is, because 100% of this currently had to be by hand simply because of platforms that we couldn't import and export in the old system. We couldn't afford to change because it was so expensive early on, and we had to put money in classrooms. That was 100% the priority. ESSER allowed for us to have that jumping off point to finish this off. So that helped us get through to get this finished on the infrastructure side. Now with that, the getting rid of the green sheets has been our task since I started in 2010. Like, this is something, it's not new. It's not something that has just come up. It's something that has been a bear, literally, for us to get to for a very long time, simply because of infrastructure we couldn't. And so I'm actually thrilled that we are able to do, we had talked about this for as long as Jamie's been here, because we wanted to move this way and we had to get everything done to do it before Jamie was here. It's the whole reason we went with Frontline in the first place, is to get to this point. And so I'm actually extremely excited about it. I found out my team gets to be the first case. And if we can do it, anybody can do it.
We're gonna pilot with maintenance first.
So for me, because we do have, we have all of the custodians, we have all of the maintenance team in our payroll. So we are a very large department. And what I know is that we're gonna make it happen, but I also see the hours that are gonna dramatically reduce in the work that we do with this program. And so I'm really excited about it. Knowing it has taken so long to finally get here is a big deal.
And Mr. Scott, if you can, when you say infrastructure, can you just clarify? You're referencing the
So,
technological.
sorry.
And
There's nuts and bolts pieces to this that nobody, unless you have to live it, you don't really care about or care to understand. In order to do a lot of the pieces that make this work well, is you have to have web-based systems, and you have to have the ability to import and export your documentation, and it's not paper, it's technology documented, your data, in and out of systems. We didn't have that. We could do parts of it in our old system, and it was okay, but it didn't seamlessly work. So we were still having to do a lot of paper, pencil, and then inputting it with data entry. Unfortunately, we didn't have the network infrastructure until about 2 to 3 years ago to support the web-based infrastructure that we needed to get to in order to make this work well together. It would work. Work well is another word. So we were challenged when it was just going to take more time to make it work well to implement, because there's no point in doing that if it's not going to work well.
And so if I understand correctly, previously our technological infrastructure was more MS-DOS, more 1980s. Now our infrastructure technologically is a little more contemporary, and now we can to try and improve upon our efficiency.
We've ramped up our bandwidth over the last few years.
Yep.
We've ramped up those server structural things that made all of this possible.
And
so
yesterday they celebrated the broadband expansion here citywide and countywide.
Exactly. So it has been a long time coming, and it has taken a lot of individuals to get here, and I can't say thank you enough for that, because it's going to make everybody's world better.
But for example, and Mrs. Bowles I know can allude to this, correct me if I'm wrong, for example, and then Mr. Weber of the question that he posed, it's going to now allow for members of our human resource department, business department, as well as all of our particular departments and with our faculty staff, it's going to reduce the amount of time that it used to take to process such documentation, and now those individuals will be able to turn such acquired time to other aspects to continue to move the work. But the efficiencies and effectiveness will
So just John, you bring up a good point about streamlining and trying to reduce costs and everything, and totally valid, and I agree with that. Now to the point that's being presented here, if you figure 1 hour per day per building being worked on this, you got 10 hours at just say $15 an hour. Over 180 days, that's $27,000. So this is a $15,000 increment, which is going to sway that back. So,
well, I would argue.
No, I mean, I
there should be some cost savings. Either if it's so much more efficient, then we need fewer people, so we would have one less position, or that time is then used for, as Dr. Wright said, other opportunities, which I am sure exist, but I'm not able to articulate those, and I don't know what those opportunities might be.
I see it as freeing up time for other tasks. So
we are only getting, I don't think there's any legislative session that goes by where the legislators, and he has since left, that says, we're not going to have you do as much this year. Instead, it's increased reporting, increased expectations on how the data is reported, when it's reported, where it's reported, the same data reported in multiple places even. In the month of September, we also had almost $29,000 in overtime costs, and a lot of that is in doing the day-to-day work and the increase. We don't have the personnel to keep up with the increased tasks that are provided. So we have one of two methods to do it: create people or create efficiencies. This recommendation is to create the efficiencies, and the hope is either a balance in the savings of some overtime, plus though people being worn out because of the amount of overtime that it's taking to complete the ever-increasing tasks, and then also hopefully there's going to be savings in the print of paper, toner, and all the other resources to print the
Jamie, you bring
amount.
up a good point talking about the amount of reporting and the amount of data that's due, because for years we've heard from community members and people who are outside of education that don't understand the dynamics behind it. In 1988, there was 2,500 students of a high school, and you have the same number of administrators over there now as you had then. Well, I would argue that the workload has increased by the amount of reporting and state requirements that go on. So I mean, there's those checks and balances there. It's always seems like everybody wants more and more and more from the people that are tasked to do the job at the state level. And so that's the rationale behind that.
I was just gonna say too, the ROI on these, it's always hard to quantify, right? Like I run into it every day because it really is time, but time equals money. So if we, like I said, want to create efficiencies, we could get to the point where, Jamie looks at her staff and then says, oh, okay, well, we've been missing this position over here. It's gone to the wayside. Now we can transition, and look how other departments might need help or look. So I just sort of always look at it in that sense. My thought was it wasn't a lot of money. I was actually thought it should be a lot more if you see some of these outside systems. So I totally understand what you're saying. It's hard to kind of, because it's not like here's your savings right here. It's also sort of investing in time and people, because we want to support them. Like, you want the best tools to do your job every day, right? You want to make it easy. It's us supporting them to make sure, and it's going to streamline too. We might be overpaying things. We might not be paying people correctly. We might not be, utilizing absence tracking like we should. And it's going to capture all that data.
Yeah,
there's going to be able to report better.
There's really never to your point, a real-time balance for absences because of doing it by hand and doing it manually. So it's always behind at least 2 weeks. And it's really not fair to the employee, nor to the management who's trying to secure the operations of their individual building. And so this provides that real-time element that's, that this technology has been around for better part of a decade or more, and it's trying to bring us those efficiencies by this technology.
And just a final piggyback of what Mrs. Bowles referenced to, also connect to what Mrs. Pickering had referenced. You stated that the cost, you were a little taken aback at how inexpensive it was. But actually, going back to what Mr. Scott mentioned, now that we technologically have turned the corner within our corporation, and also citywide with the expansion of broadband, for those that may not know, big celebration yesterday for it citywide. But now we can start to truly maximize some of the technological software and platforms that we have, such as even with board docs. There's some exploration with it that we can now turn the corner and move down the road on. But to Mrs. Bowles' point and what Mr. Walton said, he really speaks to that three-headed visionary perspective, quality tier 1 instruction, systemic alignment, and this really starts to allow us to align some of that infrastructure systemically, metaphorically speaking, to meet all of the needs of our students. And as Mr. Walton alluded to, that social emotional support, what my highlighting happened entailed, this may free up time or energy and resources to meet our students also where they are. Because yes, while there are more requirements from the state, we also have necessities from students that we've never had before.
Not even just looking at the education side, just looking at, from a business side, the number of employees per HR professional. We're high on that ratio. And to be able to maintain the needs of that department, you have to build in the efficiencies.
Jamie, when you said the overtime 29,000, is that right? What'd you say, for what period of time?
September.
For September. Mm-hmm. And so this system is 15,500 per year. And so the hope is, for me, thinking about the numbers, that this is going to far outweigh, because it's going to make you more efficient, it's going to let you, your employees just mentally
and the
take
truth
a break
is,
too, but also, time-wise, just to make things more efficient.
Things just aren't, because of the increased tasks and the same amount of people overall, things are, you're always working to catch up. And that's not a productive environment for the staff, nor for the school. One of the offsets that's a high need is grant management here. And the thought would be to make this efficient enough where that payroll deputy could also then help with grant management. Because the more you can stay on top of grant management, and I with these three wonderful people to my left, I am sure their insides are screaming, yes. And that is only beneficial to the school as well, not only for seeking grants, but staying on top of them, because there's nothing worse than getting a grant and not fully utilizing it to its fullest extent, and requesting the reimbursements in an overly timely manner. So I think this provides those tools to try to, so it's not a matter of hopefully we can eliminate, it's that we can maintain the ever increasing workload without having to hire somebody, because I think it's our responsibility to be able to do that. And when we get the additional work and have the additional need, because that's the other thing, you're not trying to just work within a system, you're trying to improve the system, which that takes extra work to do that. And it's our responsibility to try to find those efficiencies before ever coming and saying you need another person. We're trying to find all the ways of making things more efficient, and to Mrs. Brunton's point, and hopefully alleviating that overtime costs along the way.
All right, we do have a motion and a second on the table. So if there are no further comments or questions, I'd like to take a vote here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. I do have one question now that this is the vote has gone through. The green sheets. Is there going to be a bonfire? Like laminated?
Well, just for clarification, obviously we're working. You know, this isn't going to be tomorrow and it's implemented.
Okay.
There's going to be, in fact, I have it on my schedule. We're going to have a kickoff planning meeting because we have a point person from our staff that's going to take the lead on this. And we have we'll have weekly meetings with Frontline to make sure that we hit that mark. And then at that point, I think it would be wonderful
maybe a celebratory
to have,
Or
to take them.
Here, they need to recycle.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. 6.03. If you still have some wind in your lungs there, Mrs. Bolster, we've got another one for you. Classified staff salary increases.
Thank you. In order to ensure Richmond Community Schools remains competitive in attracting and retaining the most qualified individuals to continue to meet the needs of our students, I recommend the following salary increases for our dedicated support staff. Classified contractual schedule increases of a minimum of 3% per hour at the rates reflected in the attached 23-24 non-certified salary schedule, effective the start of the 23-24 school year. Retro pay will be calculated and paid on November 20th, 2023. And within that, environmental services, the 2-3 position, beginning rate increases to $15. That's why I said minimum. That one's a little bit higher than that 3% to get them to that $15 per hour, with incremental increases based on years of experience. Classified non-contractual or hourly schedule increases of a minimum of 3% per hour, effective 10/20 of 23, which is the beginning of a pay cycle. The first pay date with the new rates would be November 20th, 2023. Instructional paraprofessionals, applied skills paraprofessionals, special education job coaches, transportation monitors, liaisons, and office clerical rates increased to a minimum of the $15 with incremental increases based on years of service. What I mean by that is right now those increments, it did not matter how long somebody stayed. There was really no push for somebody to want to retain for multiple years, because whether you were here 0 years or here 20 years, you got the same rate of pay. So while they're minimal increments, because that's all we could afford, they are increments to hopefully encourage longevity, a little bit built into that. For those positions that are difficult to fill and must be filled to meet the educational needs of students, up to an additional $1 per pay may be added at the discretion of the superintendent. Preschool instructors, minimum rate increased to $18 per hour with incremental increases based on years of service. And then also this includes a substitute rate increase and a separate increase for certified substitute teachers and building substitute positions. As mentioned last year, this has been a multi-tiered approach to reward our current staff as well as attract an overall diverse, qualified team. This aligns with the Board of School Trustees' strategic plans and goals.
Thank you, Mrs. Bolser. Do we have a motion?
I would move that we approve 6.03 classified staff salary increases.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I'm happy to see this. I appreciate you bringing it to us. I know we've seen an increase before, and that's what our goal has been, and yours as well, to get the pay up, so thank you.
I feel like this is an adequate target to hopefully start really marketing now. In fact, my team has a meeting planned for the no meeting Friday rule. We pushed through that, and to begin to market, we have some ideas that we'd like to really launch at some of our most highly attended games and things like that, so we can really and coffee and hiring, those types of scenarios, now that we feel like we can compete with the places that we would be going into with a hourly rate.
Would you like to take this opportunity to tell what the new sub rate would be pending approval?
Yes, I would be happy to. I know that, like I said, it added a new certified rate because we also have, I mean, we need to do everything we can to fill our rooms with substitutes, being around illness within the buildings, obviously we're a little bit more susceptible to getting sick, so we have to try to make sure we can maximize that sub pool, and it's a highly competitive field. All the schools are in the same boat. Everybody reports sub shortages. So with this, the recommendation is to increase the full day substitute teacher pay to $95, the substitute teacher half day to $55, and then also the certified substitute teacher full day $115, and then to match that building level substitute at that $115 a day as well, because they're long term. They're there more permanent full-time basis. That was something, the ones that we really targeted are the ones that we have experienced the highest rate of turnover, which that's costly. I mean, you know that there's a severe amount of cost with high turnover, and those are the rates that we were seeing the highest level of turnover that needed our most attention. So thank you.
And one other little part of the promo, if you could let the public know just what are the requirements in order to be a sub.
Well, they just have to, well, it depends what level. The certified sub, they just need to have a license, or we even are retired teachers, although we have a special caveat for retired teachers if they're a long-term sub, but they would fit under the 115, but they really just need to come in and complete, there's a substitute praxis that they can take, and my wonderful staff walks them through and even has turned on the computers and made sure that they have everything that they need to take that online test and a high school or GED, high school diploma or GED.
Thank you so much. All right, so we've got a motion, we've got a second. Additional questions or comments?
Just cost to the funds. I know there was a fairly significant preschool grant that was able to pull some of those dollars, specifically the preschool teachers and maybe the paras in those positions, out of the Education Operations Fund. But what is the impact to the operation and education funds?
So approximately $150,000 to the general fund, just under $100,000 to the operations fund. Title is about $17,000 to $18,000 impacted. And it's important that I also say that I met with these, again, three lovely people as they were putting together their grants. Because there is, like you said, even with the preschool grant and then the other miscellaneous grants, special ed, there is a high amount of funding that goes into, especially like our paraprofessionals, as you mentioned, our preschool instructors, they're paid for out of these grants, not within the education or operations fund. So I sat down with them as they were developing their grants to make sure we wrote this recommendation into their grant work that was done back in September. So that was something that was considered at the time.
Preschool grant is probably the biggest that's pulling a lot of these dollars. Is that a 1-year grant?
Multi-year, I think it's a 3-year.
3-year grant. So, okay, and we might be able to renew or find other sources within 3 years, but I just, if it's a 1 year, then it's hard to go, okay, now that's gonna be absorbed next year, so.
And I
if
think
it's
some
3
of it
years.
too is trying to find that ROI, right? That balance of you're trying to open the preschool doors to gain those students, because
Right.
one, I think it helps the more they come in, and we can help build their capacity for learning at that level and have them prepared for that kindergarten level learning age, being potty trained and having all of those mechanisms and social awareness cues in place so that they're ready to learn at that kindergarten level. The hope is to be able to get some of our kids to come back home too. So we're looking for that, that perfect balance point to Pete's point. And I think we have a good 3-year ability within that grant to experience that.
And the $18 for preschool teachers and the 15s for paras satisfies the needs of the grant.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. All right, next we have 6.04, purchase of real estate. Mrs. Skelf.
Good evening. Tonight before you is the purchase agreement for the McBride Stadium. We have discussed this at numerous times throughout the last month or so. The purchase agreement, as we discussed, contains a purchase price of $12,000. It does mean that we will have investment in the property. That was a part of the negotiation. It is just over 19 acres and is the property from the corner of 13th Street and Main back to the Armory and goes to Peacock Road. So, and then across the creek. So, before you tonight is the purchase agreement. One note, throughout the very hard work that Mr. Cross and Mr. Sickman have been doing in getting this agreement wrapped up and buttoned up, the exhibits are still coming. They are not, they are really legalese and the legal description, things like that. So they do not impact the agreement per se when it comes to the terms that you are agreeing on. But that will be here shortly. So tonight before you is the purchase agreement for McBride Stadium.
Move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Do we have questions or comments?
I had a couple questions, and I don't know that anything can change at this point, but the item 22, the city's first right to refusal,
Yep.
Should that sunset at some point, like 20 years or 30 years, or that would go away? Is there any advantage to us to do that?
Well, I mean,
not really, probably.
We could, if we had an issue, I mean, I think we could probably see if there's, I think it's I think your point's well taken. I think it's a temporary Band-Aid, if you will, or a comfort piece for them. They didn't like the wording in there that I had about accepting out affiliated entities, and I explained to them, well, don't get me wrong, I didn't suggest that the B word was going to be used at all by the board, but if we were to consider substantially having to finance improvements to that facility, bonding could be a possibility, and if bonding were a possibility, it would be quite likely that we wouldn't necessarily have geo-bonding capability to do it, so we'd be looking at a lease financing. If we're looking at a lease financing, then we have to transfer nominal title to the property to a building corporation or holding corporation. So once I explained that, that came back on the table. They still want that in there, and again, I think it's, I don't see it as being a terrible impediment to what we're about. I think from what I understand, our goal is to transition that facility into what it once was, and then.
The same kind of goes for item 23, the softball field. Indefinite use seems a little
Well, at a fee, so I mean, we'll have to
They
just
are paying
basically
for it.
negotiate the fee
But
each year.
if the field, if we decide to get rid of the field, I mean,
Well, they'd have first right.
do they have any pushback?
No.
And
I
then
mean, the field is ours, and so it's just a matter, if it
So
stays.
if there's a field that's there, they have the first right to use it.
Pre-scheduled though.
Okay, and if there's no field there, then there's no field to use. All right.
And you know, that's a good question, because we'd like to think there may come a time when we need parking that close to the facility, based on the demand for usage.
My last point, or well, 2 points more, I'm sorry, is the environmental report. I know with the landfill, I mean, I'm guessing we're gonna, at our expense, do a full-fledged analysis of what's there.
I don't know by full-fledged. I think we can do a phase 1, which is probably all I would recommend at this point. I mentioned to Karen that if we ever think about doing, right now, I mean, it's a rumor that there's no data support this.
Well, I've heard it from outside here, so I think it's a bigger rumor than I had anticipated.
I mean, I've been around for a few years myself and spent a lot of time on the west side of town, since that's where I lived. And,
okay.
If it was there, I don't recall it. But in any event, if we were to put any type of structure on that, part of our planning would involve necessary soil sampling, compaction analysis, what have you, based on what our purpose is, of course. I'm not terribly concerned about that.
Okay.
As far as the overall environmental, I think we got a pretty much a good comfort level that the phase 1 will show us what we need.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any continually existing underground storage tanks. There may have been some in the past.
I'm not aware of any.
But we're not aware of
The only thing I had received information on is that maybe a gravel pit had been used, which I think might be part of the rumor issue.
There's limestone directly under the field, correct? I mean, there's
I
a
don't
lot of
have-
rock there, I don't know.
I don't have soils samples.
But that's here. The last thing was, I may have missed it, our investment's not specified in the contract, is it?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, I mean, I think
that's
good.
That's our decision.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
So the purchase price of $12,000 isn't very much. Our money comes from the upgrade and upkeep of it. So my hope is, and I know we've discussed, the community partners will help. We can get partners to help absorb that money so that it's not coming from.
Yes, and what I'll say is we've been paying just about a little over $6,800 a year for field usage. So really, we're paying less than 2 years worth of field usage for the property. But yes, you are absolutely right. It's our intent to allow the community to use it if they wish. We currently do that with our facilities. We have usage fees for our facilities now. It would look like that, and we would come up with a usage fee schedule for that facility, just like we have one for Civic Hall, McGuire Hall, and schools. So that is not uncommon to us already. It's something that we do want to encourage because we want the field to be used. We want it to be available to our community. And so that's something that we're looking forward to.
All right, further questions and comments? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Zaleski, a second by Mr. Walton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0.
And before moving on, I think, as I'm sure Member Brunton understands, being in the business, this is the start of basically a 90-day due diligence period. We will be requiring a survey, so the survey will provide the legal description. The legal description will then be your Exhibit A. We already have a schematic with an overlay of the floodplain, which I think is helpful. We will be doing a pre-closing, I won't, but somebody's going to be doing a pre-closing walkthrough to make sure that we know what property that is going to be left there is claimed by the city, because then they have, I think, 30 days to remove it. If they don't, within a period of time, it's presumptively then ours. They don't want it. But I think we just don't want to have any surprises. We are going to go ahead and change the locks. There were so many locks and so many keys outstanding that it was decided the safest thing to do to protect our ongoing investment is just from the get-go change the locks and control their access. So this is not the end of it. It's quite clearly the beginning. And closing probably will not occur this year. It'll probably be sometime shortly after the first of the year.
But we are, in essence, accepting the proverbial baton handoff, right? Is that what we're doing, right?
We're doing what?
No, we are, we're saying we are wanting to do this. That's kind of, I mean.
Yeah, it's a contract. We're in
Yeah.
a contract. There are various conditions to our having to complete the contract. More so, conditions that we either will see that are met or will have to waive. There are very few conditions on the part of the city. They basically have agreed that they'll do it, and all the appropriate people will authorize it. So.
Okay.
But this is going to make it tough for any substantive improvements for this spring baseball season, I would say.
I can't speak to that. Karen can probably more authoritatively than I could, but my impression of the condition of the field is the answer to your question is yes, it's going to be very difficult to get it playable, perhaps, certainly not playable to the specifications that we'd like to see in 2 or 3 years, to where we can really go out and say, you definitely want to have a home-and-home contract with Richmond High School.
But at least when we put $1 into the stadium, it's our dollar that we're getting back. It's our property. It's not.
Yeah. And of course, with this now, and the announcement was made, on the Jazz, I think you understand that they're taking the furlough of their 24 season under the terms of their league franchise agreements. We will have control of concessions for this year too.
Karen, thank you for your work on this. It's been much appreciated. I know there's been the time's just getting involved to get the architect and everything.
Yes, I want to echo that. Thank you. No, this is exciting. Definitely excited that RCS is going to be continuing the rich history that McBride has. So, all right. We are going to move on then. Mrs. Bolster is going to join us again for 6.05 with the budget adoption.
In front of you is the proposed 2024 budget. As you know, it's been presented in a public hearing on September 27th. Today is the date that has been set for the adoption. This will be accomplished by the board's adoption of the following: resolution number 2310-1, resolution for appropriations and tax rates, also known as the budget form 4. Resolution number 2310-2, resolution to authorize budget changes. Resolution number 2310-3, resolution to adopt the 2024 capital projects plan. Resolution number 2310-4, resolution to adopt the 2024 bus replacement plan. The school operations fund levy appeal resolution. The adoption includes an excess levy appeal in the amount of $420,839 in the operating fund for transportation costs pursuant to IC 20-46-8-3. Transportation and costs increase over approximately 17% over the preceding year. The requirement that the state permits is it has to do minimum 10% in order to file the excess levy. And also, as asked at the last meeting, of that $420,839, approximately the net gain would be $292,175 based off of brief little analysis that I did, and the approximate tax rate increase would be 0.0264. However, the majority of taxpayers within Richmond Community Schools have hit their property tax cap. So once I look to see what the impact would be per homeowner, the brief audit of all of them that I did, and after reaching out to other officials here locally, it does not appear it would be a tax increase. It would be merely a change of the piece of the pie for this portion. I also do want to mention and remind the board that although at the last budget hearing that we presented some additional debt implementation, that does not affect this budget in the sense of the levy and the property tax rate, other than the transportation levy. That is to be able to begin trying to offset ongoing operational costs as we enter into the 2024 budget. So I just wanted to make that point as we begin to venture down that process. I also have a meeting scheduled with our team to finish that timeline for implementation and to provide the board, because I think it's important to provide you with different options as we move forward with that utilization. So our team began working on that, and we'll continue to do that to present you with different options. I would anticipate, and I think I mentioned that in the information, I do recommend passing a resolution to reimburse. Basically what that does is if you know you are working towards a debt issuance, it permits any reimbursement for rainy day fund use that you've had to encounter or cash balance reserves that have been utilized. And it basically will just streamline the process a little bit. So if there's a need to use those reserve funds for something that you would be issuing debt on, it allows you to just reimburse those funds. What it actually does too, though, is it helps to minimize the interest rate fees because you can extend it as long as you can, so you're not paying interest up front while issuing the debt. So it pushes that issuance back when the market is at the perfect point for us, which will short-term gain us on the cost of interest. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay. In a second.
A second.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I had a question, Sarah, and this is concerning the bus replacement plan. And I know we, 2 or 3 years ago, did a bunch of work to get it organized. 12 years still seems like a pretty pretty short life. Is it possible to look at evaluate? It looks like people are getting up to 15 years out of buses. Let's say we wanted to go to a couple of specialty buses, like some propane or something else, to free up some dollars. Can we get more life? I mean, should we be using mileage instead of years? Is 12 still right? I mean,
so I can talk
I guess,
a
are you
little
looking
bit.
at that all the time, I guess?
Yes, absolutely. We just looked at it today even. So we run 2,600 miles a day for our routes, and that is every single day, plus summer school. And summer school is about another 20,000 miles that we run for. It's a lot. And so what I can say is that I'm always evaluating that. The specialized buses have a lot of infrastructure. You can get grants for some of it. That part, I'm less worried about the infrastructure. There's some actual true issues with where our garage is located, in that we cannot sustain the electrical infrastructure necessary without a new it's not a transformer, but a substation development in that area, because there's not enough of it to go around if we do that, because we have to have the super high power chargers because we have so little time between our routes, and we need so much power to do the super fast charging, which is what we would have to do. The one thing is, I've evaluated the routes right now. We have some routes in the Vale area, we have some routes in the Star area, and we have some routes for test because they're in Vale and Star that we could do that with. The one thing is it efficient and financially responsible? Not yet for us, because it doesn't give us the bang for the buck yet. Is it a great idea? Absolutely. I would love to get there. But we don't, the way that our buses
Not so much to focus on that issue
I
now,
know,
just the
getting
life
there.
of
I'm
our
getting there.
gas.
Yeah, but that's part of it, because that impacts what you do. You asked me if I'm evaluating, so I'm trying to let you know what I evaluate. So that's where we're at on that. Propane, we would have to put new tanks in, we would have to redo a lot of stuff. It's extremely expensive to do all that infrastructure. It doesn't give us longer lives than buses. Right now we're running buses at 13 years because we wanted to pull out and extend that, so we got in a routine, 5 buses every single year, because we had that huge mass of 10. If I know John was on the board, I'm not sure if anybody else, Brad was on the board. We had a huge year with 10 buses that you couldn't fund because the way that the state funds bus replacement is it takes your entire package and divides it out by 12 years, or 10 years, or 5 years. Right now, we only report 5, but according to the way that you're supposed to plan, you're still supposed to plan 12, and that's something statutorily that has existed for a while. What I will say is the amount of miles we put on buses, there are times that if buses aren't super great, we're putting them in the sale early, and we're trading them, if they can be traded, a year early. We watch those miles super tight. Sometimes they require a lot of maintenance that you're not getting the miles on them. Sometimes they can last longer and we keep them and we get rid of those that aren't working right. 12 years is the sweet spot, I will tell you that. They start breaking down a little faster.
What kind of mileage are we getting on a 12-year bus?
So,
like 250,000?
Oh gosh, I think it's more than
300?
that. I think it's more than that. So they're running, just a second, I can tell you. Sorry, I would have had this prepared if
It's
I had
all right.
known.
We can move on.
Just one point to be made, which I think everybody here knows, but so the public understands, is that before our fleet can hit the streets, there's mandatory state leased inspection for safety of all buses. So that standards are the same for the 1-year-old bus versus a 12-year-old bus before they hit the streets.
So,
I believe the state also requires additional checks
They do.
for anything beyond.
Over
That's what I was
12.
trying
You
to
have do it
quick
twice a year over 12.
statute.
So minimally, if they don't run summer school and they don't run any midday routes, which we run this city all day, not just morning and afternoon. We have special transportation that happens for our students the entire time we're in school. So this is the minimal mileage on a bus is 194,000 before it hits 12 years. That's minimal. That's no field trips. That's no athletic trips. That's no summer school. That's no midday. What I will say is almost every single bus in our fleet does field trips. They do go on athletic trips because they actually will move the buses around to keep that mileage similar on all of the buses. So yes, I will say we are maximizing every mile, but we are also finding that 12 is the sweet spot. We don't have, we have maintenance, but it becomes increasingly different at 12. And you have a lot more inspections, and it's still recommended. The state still stays at 12. So we do evaluate it. I meet with student transit, the actual mechanics at student transit, I meet at least yearly, if not every quarter, which is more likely, just to talk about that, see if there's things that we can do, if there's things that we need to be thinking about when we look at the bus replacement plan, because we do that in May. You know, is it the right time? Because we're always looking at it and we're always asking for the detail and the data to just see if it's worth it for us yet. And it just hasn't been there quite yet. Now I will note that the price of buses has gone up by 25% in the last 12 months, and the time it takes to get a bus is now at minimum 18 months. So we already have our buses on order for next year because we know we aren't going to get them until the end almost of next year. We did that, if you'll recall, we did that through rainy day, and we're going to move that PO at the beginning of 2024. But we're going to have to do that if we want buses every year, because otherwise the delay is real, and there's nothing we can do about that.
And I'll also just piggyback if I can. If once we come to purchase based off of the bus replacement plan, and if a bus is still in wonderful working shape, the board can vote to amend the plan and put that at a later date. So you always have that flexibility, to your point.
And we actually do that internally if it's in good, I mean, we just naturally do that. If there's one that's low miles, doing great, you'll see if you look year over year, it will stay on that plan. It's been a few years since we've had that because we've run the wheels off of them, but it does happen. Literally.
Safety.
Yes.
safely. But I mean, by the time we get there, they actually, the thing that I need like everybody to understand is we have about 6 or 7 that we reserve on the lot that are our oldest buses. And they are for when you have a situation where you've got to go switch out a bus because of a mechanical issue or something like that. All of our buses 100% pass inspection, 100% are maintained at all times, and all are ready to go on the road at all times. But we do have about 7 that are at the lot that are there in reserve. Part of that is because we do have a lot of field trips, and some of them, when they fall over into the afternoon routes, we have to be prepared for that. But most are so that we can make sure that we are covered in the event of an emergency.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion as well as a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, vote passes 6-0. Next, we have item number 6.06, Mrs. Bolser.
Been a little busy. My voice is wearing out.
Your voice is almost gone.
I think I'm at the end. This is my last
Yes.
thing. Everybody's saying, thank goodness. Pursuant to Indiana Code 20-26-5-11.2, effective July 1, 2023, a school corporation may employ or contract with an individual convicted of certain offenses if a majority of the members elected or appointed to the governing body of the school corporation approves the employment or contract as a separate special agenda item. Before you is the hiring of an employee that their background would not exclude the employee from employment pursuant to the statute.
All right, do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. All right, next we have policy review and updates, and we're going to be looking at policy 0167.3. Do we have a motion on that?
I move that we take 7.01 policy 0167.3 to second reading.
Okay. So we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments?
I have some. It'd been nice to see the original policy, but I mean, I could have done that, kind of yelled out the changes. I don't know if we use that as the base, I presume. But 2 points.
It was the base,
Okay.
yes.
So I'm guessing there were just some tweaks.
It was just, yeah.
First, and we try to do this early on, we really need the people, when they give their name, really need their address and district. And if we're gonna do policy, we probably need to include that in the policy. So I don't know exactly what verbiage that would look like, but I think that would kind of add a little context to maybe who's speaking even. And then I think we're kind of limiting I don't know, maybe Ron can speak to Robert's rules, but the presiding officer or the president's prerogative to alter. Once all this is written down as it is, I don't know that the president can then just say, we're going to go to 2 minutes, or we're going to allow more than 30 minutes. And so I don't know that by specifying those times, that I guess I think, I don't know what you do, but I would just have you consider that. Is that really what we want to do? And does that limit our flexibility at meetings, having the president make kind of those adjustments on the fly? So those are the 2 things I had.
To me, that changing it makes this more fair, so it's not up to someone's discretion and some reason to approve someone to speak longer or have longer time. We're being fair with everyone, no matter what the public commentary.
Well, if we implement it, I mean, it has to be, we have to do this. I mean, we're saying this is what we're gonna do.
Right.
So the first time someone goes over, because now it's in writing.
It is.
Whereas, you know, if I'm speaking, I say, Mrs. Stoltz, could I have 30 seconds to complete my thought? The tendency is to say, if you complete it in 30 seconds, yes, go ahead.
And I feel like at sometimes it has been approved and other times it hasn't, so this keeps it, you know, it keeps it all fair. That it isn't like, oh, yes, you can have extra time, or yes, you go ahead and finish your thought, but then other times, gavel, your time's up. So this is just, we're being fair with everyone.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess in the past, we've had a, you know, or current policy is a max of up to 5 minutes, and we have, you know, occasionally allowed someone to complete their thought and go over that 5 minutes. So I would imagine we would have the discretion to do the same, you know, even with a policy change.
I don't want to get pushback on it.
Is that right, Ron? Okay.
I mean, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And depending on the strength of the chair, you know, there may be a request for consensus to allow it, there may not. I mean, you have the flexibility. Robert's Rules of Order are guides. They're not binding. They are not substantive law or substantively binding rules. And policies can be waived.
Okay.
The point is not doing it on a prohibited basis. I mean,
You could always call for, or we'll put a motion on the table to suspend policy 0167.3 subsection C. For the meeting. And
So we'll memorize that. No, but, so John, back to your first thought as far as, okay, so having people clearly state name, and you were saying address also.
So your address,
That's a very
or
good
school
thought.
district, or
I do like that.
we've tried to do it consistently, but you kind of forget, and
So maybe just adding that to the sign-up sheet?
yeah, I was going to say that may be
yeah,
something.
is it on the sign-up sheet now?
It is, okay.
Maybe we just need to put a little more emphasis on making sure that is filled out.
Well, I think for the public.
Say that everyone filled out every piece of it.
Okay, great.
But when they speak, like I just watched the I-70 comments, and when someone says, I live adjacent, or, I mean, it really gives a lot more context, or I have students in the Charles, I mean, you don't want to, I mean, it's a fine line of too much information, but I think I think address is reasonable.
So even, like you're saying, when they speak, they
Introduce
should
themselves,
say,
yeah,
hi,
so
I'm
then
Joe
if you're watching it,
Smith, and this is my address, and this is like the school district, and you said something about the district,
Well,
so you're saying maybe the
think you
school
can pick and choose, you don't have
district.
to do it all.
Well, during COVID time, it was really hot because there were a lot of people that did not live in the district and did not have any affiliation with Richmond schools came in to speak. So we wanted to make sure that we knew exactly who they were, where they were from, what district they represented.
So like to Kristen's point, if we're in the habit of doing it when things are easy, I think.
Yeah, very good point.
I would like to see, maybe this is too much more of, you know, helping our, like moderating our speakers, right? Like Bridget will, you know, she's got the sign up list, or as Ms. Claypole used to do, and maybe
Like
someone
she's
introducing them.
and says, this is, okay.
Their name and their address.
Maybe, or
just say
whatever it is.
representing whatever district.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's been in our past policy that we even say they, but that hasn't been written down where they have to say their name, but they do. So these things may just be protocols that we just change, but won't affect the policy.
I think it
That'd
helps
be
the
good.
transition, because obviously, like,
Yes.
it takes a lot, even me getting sworn in, there's no one here, but it's a little nerve-wracking.
nerve-wracking for people.
And then, you know, it's like we're introducing them. And the other thing, just as a new board member and watching these, it is super awkward when we have to cut someone off. But I don't know if we actually have a timer up there, that it's the soft ding, so it's, because sometimes it can.
Many districts have visible timers.
Yeah, it just.
Yeah, have it have it on the screen, and
Which we
you
should
see
probably.
the countdown.
Because obviously I know for you, it's when you have to hit the gavel, or you know,
That's something
it's
we-
verbally cutting someone off.
Right.
You know, we have to do that, but it can come across as
Rude or disrespectful.
yeah. So it's like if they hear that bell, they wrap up their.
To your point, Ms. Pickering, we can speak with our amazing technology team because of what we have on these screens.
Yeah.
There may be a digital way to place the timer during that
Yeah.
session.
That's how most districts seem to do it.
So that they can, so the speaker can see as well.
Yes,
How much time they have left to maybe truncate there.
Because we would typically would give a 1 minute warning, which when then, even that would disrupt the train of thought.
It does,
typically.
yeah.
Um,
And you always think, 5 minutes when you're talking does not seem like 5 minutes.
So I think with a 3 minute time limit, like we ended, I think everybody was pretty short today, but I think we'll have people bumping that 3 minutes a lot more frequently than we had bumping the 5 minutes in the past.
John had made a comment that that's the way most districts do it as far as the timer. What is, when we talk to ISBA, what's kind of the standard of what most districts do? Is the 3 minutes more down to the standard?
Right. Well, that's what.
Yeah, from where we were at the state convention, 3 minutes was heavily the norm. When we said 5 minutes, everybody in the room turned around and looked at us saying, who are these people? It was pretty wild, and a lot of corporations actually do a 1 minute. So 3 minutes was the norm that everyone we talked to, dozens of different corporations, and just I can't remember the facilitator's name there, who was actually there from ISBA, but he said he didn't know of anybody at 5 minutes.
Dr. Wright?
Sir.
Was the addition made that, I think a practice you have, I think it's a good practice, is when you have a special meeting or when you have a work session that's dealing with a limited number of topics, public comment is to be directed and related to the comments,
That
or the
is
topics
in
on the
here.
agenda. So
Yes, sir.
that, I think, is a good thing to have in your policy.
Yes, and it clearly states and identifies that, for example, during the work session, we have a few different protocols and caveats than we do for our business meetings. But yes, it's also identified. Yes, sir.
The meetings called as special meetings or work sessions where the agenda for the meeting is limited to a designated subject or subjects. Public comment will be limited to comments directly related to the agenda subject or subjects.
Now, if you deviate by consent and add a matter to the agenda, then that may, if you intend to take final action on that matter during the meeting, you'll have to, before you vote, you'll have to open it up, public comment again.
Okay.
Under the new law.
Good point.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, with a motion and a second, we'll go ahead and move to our vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Vote passes 6-0. All right, next we have other discussions. Dr. Wright.
President Stoltz and trustees come before you this evening and I'm going to respectfully request that our Chief of Operations, Mrs. Karen Scalp, also join in such conversation and discussion of an option to replace the field turf there at our below Libel Field. Mrs. Scalp, I know, has, along with not only with McBride and so many other things and water main breaks and all that encompasses her purview. If you can just share with us some of the options that we can explore, as well as some history as to how we've gotten here.
So we'll start with history because it's my favorite subject.
Hey,
so
there we go.
Why not?
There we go. Backbone of education.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You got nothing beats it. So
Robotics.
we originally put the turf on Libel Field in 2013. It was part of the master plan, and it was a really fun event when we reopened it. So it is now time. We have gotten more than the life. So the life expectancy of the field they told us between 8 to 10 years. So we are right at that mark. And that's because we've taken really great care of it. And we expect to continue to do that in the future. But it is time that we replace the carpet. And so throughout this period, we've had 2 fills and then periodic just small fills and sweeping. And then we did resew the carpet this year, which is also not uncommon periodically throughout the process. So it is the time in which we need to replace the carpet. With that, it was a part of this 2024 facility plan. It is also a part of that long-term plan that we've had on that list since we got the turf, because part of the board's determination at the time was that if we're going to do this, we're going to maintain it, we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that we replace it routinely to make sure it's in good condition. So with that, the cost is somewhere anywhere between about $225 to $275, $300. This is an opportunity in which there is a QPA, which is a purchasing bid that has already been done, either nationwide or statewide, that provides the school with the ability to not have to do the bidding process. And with that, it means that if you use a certain company through a service center, then you get all that pricing without all of the work with advertising and opening bids and doing all of that. So that is the route that I would prefer to go. It does save a little bit of money. It also provides us with the ability to move faster so that we can make sure we can get on that schedule. I would like to get on the schedule for spring. I spoke with Mr. Bolser, who is back there, to make sure that it won't interrupt things. And if we get to that late spring and super early summer and get that done, then we can make sure that we have the least amount of impact to our sports. So that's something that, depending on the company, I really would like to get this done so we can get on their schedule to either get it as early as possible in the spring or at just the sweet spot between sport seasons. So that's what's before you tonight for information. Technically, this does not need a board approved action, because if we use the QPA process, that's naturally through a PO, and everything just happens through the purchasing mechanisms that we already have throughout the district. But I did want you to know this because it is something of a little bit more substantial funding wise. It does cost a little bit more. But it is part of the plan. It is part of the budget that was before you tonight. It is part of what we were doing throughout the entire time that I've been here with the plans to get to this point. So I guess I'll just ask if you have any questions or thoughts at this point.
Questions, thoughts? Do the coaches and players prefer the turf over grass? Or
I'll let Mr. Bolser chime in if he wants to, but I would say yes. What we found immediately following implementation was that we were able to use the field not just for athletics but for PE classes. They're able to be out there all the time. You can practice whether it's a little raining, whether it's snowing, technically you can practice. It does have value in the ability to use it. And I don't know, do you know anything that you'd like to add?
As far as
more?
The coaches, I mean, I think there's probably a handful of people that have opinions one way or another. The difference, especially for a place in Indiana, the advantage of having turf is that, number one, that would essentially only be a football field if it is grass. We would have to be in a situation where the wear and tear based on the weather and the elements, it's almost impossible to maintain that. The feasibility of that means obviously we would move locations for soccer and take them on site or something along those lines. I know that. Yep. Sure. Of course. The weather situation obviously plays a part of it as well. The way that turf is, there's drainage underneath, and it allows it to be an all-weather situation. So you don't have rainouts, you don't have the flooding aspect of it. It is, but there's obviously a controversy if you're paying attention to the NFL right now. Some people are saying players want to go back to all natural grass. They feel like there's significantly more knee injuries. I don't know that the data proves that at the high school level, but it's a lot of it has to do with what shoes you wear and the amount of training that you take place. So there's pros and cons to everything. You know, I think the financial impact of trying to go back to natural turf at this point would probably be excessive, because you would have to completely redo the entire structure, put in new drainage system, completely excavate all of it. So, you know, I think 10 years ago when that process was done, it's probably a permanent solution at this point.
That was the plan, was to, that way when we replace the turf, it'd be at a minimal cost, because the base and drainage and everything else is done. Now, you referenced the NFL going back to natural grass and a lot of it. Basically, they're saying the split turf, or the split film turf, and then there's a dual fiber turf, two totally separate entities, and one's better than the other. And I think the NFLPA is doing away with the split film.
Well, yeah, I think that the biggest concern that the players union has is more the inconsistency from week to week, and the way that they're changing from one turf to another. The good thing for the North Central Conference and Richmond, as far as football is concerned, everybody has turf. With soccer, that's not necessarily the case. I know that Anderson plays on a natural grass surface, and several of the other schools. So boys and girls soccer both play on a natural grass surface in the sectional. So, and that does change. I mean, speaking to the coaches' perspective of it, that changes the dynamic of preparation for them. And, you know, I talked to Carson Jones. He does prefer, because they practice on turf all the time, he prefers to play the games on the turf, but because it's faster, the ball, things that I'm not necessarily a soccer person, but
you're doing good.
But I do think that they, our coaches are used to operating on the turf now, and we eliminated going back and forth between the practice field this year, because this was their home playing surface, and we wanted to be able to alternate all of our teams onto the turf as much as possible.
Yeah, I guess my suggestion would just be to, like you said, the entire NCC has turf, is maybe just reach out to them, see if they've got the split fiber, if they've got the dual fiber.
Okay.
That way, to the point of consistency. So,
I guess my concern was, I mean, you know, and turf's been on the radar, I'm surprised, 10 years. It seems like came pretty quick. But not having an athletic plan, having McGuire sit there, having tennis courts going somewhere, softball switching, adding an 8th lane to the track, I'd be a lot more comfortable if we said this is what, in 10 years, what our RCS athletic facilities will look like.
Oh, I think there's definitely no doubt that we need to operate in a situation where we have not only a 10-year plan, but a 5-year plan.
Because let's say in 5 years, we want to add that lane. I'm not sure what great problems that creates for us, that we just spent $250,000 on turf.
Well, I will just let you know, because we talked about this last week. It's my intention to have facility plans for each of these areas that we need. I've got to have some time to do that. So I know that we're going to be talking about even more of that with this new things that are happening. But what I know is that I don't think that an 8th lane, when the map was originally done, I've been looking at them a lot the last few weeks. When the map was originally done, we have to do something about the bleachers if we put an 8th lane in, because of the amount of space you have to have on the sides of the football field. So the impact probably will be less on the field and more on the sides beyond the field even. At least from the way that I'm seeing the specs on the actual, like when the map was spec'd out originally.
It's more of where the landing is, and I mean, there is space for the 8th lane, and you can do all that. We have the removable stairs, and there is enough space other, obviously that wall that is on the north end. But, there's no doubt that a strategic plan we created a strategic plan with the athletic department. I can share all of that. But incorporated with that has to be a facilities plan that and a budgetary plan that goes along with that, because it's not fair for an athletic department to say to you, hey, yeah, we need to do this. I'm not asking for $1 million. I'm not asking for $5 million. But at some point,
I don't mean to point fingers at all. I've been on this board a long time, and we have never had a plan. So, it's not like to think we're going to have one today. But with so many changes and the interest from you and Karen in having a plan, it seems like maybe to go another year till that plan is more fleshed out with the turf. Just to know that.
Well, I'm
conservative by nature
on that.
But
I would say to you that when you're talking about the insurance policy, the reason she brought up the fact that we had to have several areas re-sewn because the seams of those begin to tear. The amount of wear and tear on a carpet. Imagine the carpet in your kitchen, or hopefully you don't have carpet in your kitchen. That would just be bad. But in your living room, if you are running and cutting and going back and forth, if your dog runs 1 million paces and does it for 10 years, the fibers of that carpet are going to tear apart. And we have activities on that on a daily basis, all the way through the summer, through the fall, and through the spring. And so the integrity of it becomes that's where, we have had several ACL injuries this year. I would more be apt to say that didn't happen necessarily in the first 5 or 6 years, but as the integrity of that part of it goes into play, that's when injuries come into place. And now if you go beyond what the manufacturer's warranty is, then you put yourself in a liability issue. And I'm not sure that $250,000 it's an invested interest.
And we've had injuries since it was new. I think
injuries
3 soccer
are
knees in the first couple years, because it's just a different turf. And like you say, there's conditioning and shoes and a ton of other stuff. But,
So do we know, or have we identified other things on the plan for Leibold so that we can, just see? So yeah, we need to do something, but what are the other projects that kind of go along with that? So mentally, we can kind of prepare, say, well, can we add this now, or do we have to?
Yes and no. So I have a laundry list of things we need to do. Budgetarily, we can't do them all.
Right.
So I've spent the spring, if you haven't seen the lifts, we've been repairing the lights as we have been able to get them, get lifts that can go where they need to go. We have been working on making sure that we can do some of those smaller things that look good. What I will say is that there is a lot that needs to be done that isn't at Leibold. And so this is something that needs to be done for all the reasons that Mr. Bolser shared, as well as the integrity of it is absolute and primary because it's safety. But there is a factor of you can tell it's at end of life. You can see it when you go there. We are trying to make positive impacts that meet multiple needs for everybody with the plans that we make. I need to do that at more facilities than just at Leibold. So the plan that I'm working toward for next year is to see that you see a little something at every building. When I've worked with principals, they want to see a little something at their buildings. At the beginning of the school year, it was absolutely important to me that I provided them with a list of things that we did since July at their buildings, even if it was small, because the smallest impact impacts the learning environment, impacts what they see every day, and it impacts how the kids feel and the staff feels. It's super important to me to be able to do that throughout the year as we go. So I 100% agree with you. Like, let's have a big plan for Libel. It would be great. But I want to do some things at other buildings too, so that everybody feels some love. Because there have been a lot of years where it didn't happen. We've put substantial funds into the high school in the last year. We're going to put substantial funds as we go. We're actually going to begin painting over fall break on 3rd floor, and we will continue throughout the breaks to paint the halls and the corridors at the high school to get that wrapped up before the end of the summer next year. So they are already going to see some substantial improvements, not just on that field. We know we've got McBride we have to do, but I also want to do some playgrounds. I want to do some stuff in the other buildings, and so that's why there are things that we could and want to do. The softball field, we know we want to do some things out there. If we can't move it right away, our goal is to get it moved. I'm going to be honest with you. We've already talked about it. Our goal is to have it moved for the season. The timeline's going to make it really hard to do that. But with that, if we don't, we know there's things that we need to do over there at the softball field for next season if we don't get it moved. So it's not particularly Liebolt, and it's not particularly that one small area. It's actually a bigger plan.
Mr. Scott, if I may.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, to piggyback on the question of Mr. Weber and what Mr. Pickering has alluded to, would I be correct in saying that now that we also have particular folks in particular areas and of the reassignments, that collaborative conversations have been ongoing and have even been started, so that therefore the plans are forthcoming. As
So
now things are settling in.
Is that part
Absolutely.
of the LWC?
Some of
master
it's
agreement?
just part of me. So I'm gonna be honest with you, some of it's just me and the way I have to function. Because what I heard the most when I've talked to principals is, well, I put in this work order and I never hear about it again.
Systemic alignment, is that what
That's
or lack thereof?
maybe, yeah.
We're aligned.
And that's the thing that I heard almost every single place I went, or every time I'm in a meeting, like that's what I heard. So I'm trying to meet needs that they actually are offering to me. The things that that they see are even different than what I see, because if you see me anywhere right now, my best friend is my camera, and I'm taking pictures all the time, so I remember when I get back to the office, this is what we're gonna go work on, this is what we're gonna go do. And so it's how I have to work, but I also know that I need to be listening to them, and I need to make sure that they have some reinforcement at our level, because they will tell, if they're an elementary person, they're gonna tell Brent, this is driving me crazy, I want this fixed. And he'll tell me. And if I don't already know about it, then we'll try our best to meet those needs. But 100% it is that. And I plan to make it better with each and every year, with each and every season, because as I get to know, there's a bit of a learning curve. I knew a lot about the areas. It's very different when you do it day to day. And so understanding, how to make all of that fit into this beautiful package is challenging, but I hope that you will see results at the end.
So Karen, do we know the cost difference between turf, which obviously $250,000, we know that, and installing grass?
No, I did not believe, I was not aware that was an option to go back on at least this. So I will just be honest, the prior boards have had no indication to go back.
Right.
What I would say, it's gonna be at least double. It
It
was
would take
$800.
$250,000 to backfill
Just
dirt and
excavate it.
reseed it, get everything. I mean, the cost would be significantly higher than just replacing.
Okay.
So when we initially did the turf, that part to get everything excavated and everything moved was over $800,000 total project. So we're looking at a quarter of it to replace the carpet every 10 years. We knew that going in. That was not something, everybody felt pretty comfortable with that, because you divide that by, 10 years and it's $25,000 a year. And that isn't, we pay that almost on the tennis courts every year, or every other. And so there are things that when you look at it in a relative speak, it's not out of line with that, if that makes sense.
So basically you're saying with turf, everything's up front, or well, sorry, with the, if we were to go back to grass, we would be doing all of the cost up front, so to speak. With turf, it's every 10 years.
It would be a continuous maintenance. You would have all of that cost plus continual maintenance.
Every year to reseed and to you have to roll it, you have to fill it, you have to, I mean, it's constant.
And what cost of the paint and the labor to paint the field is pretty significant.
And
A
limited
football field is, in the way that a football field has to be crowned, you would have, I mean, it's a significant difference. And that's why soccer doesn't play on a natural grass football field because
but we were thinking we would take that offsite anyway, so that's kind of a mute point if we are relocating that.
I will go away from athletics with one small comment. And that is because I was at all the meetings when we went this way. And I'm gonna say this a little bit in jest, but it's real. There is a turf war when you don't have turf. And that's because if you make divots, who did it? I wanna know who did it. I saw arguments between music programming and athletic programming to the point where the band couldn't even get on the field unless it was game day on game. Because there was so much turf war about who made divots that it just wasn't worth it. And it made it hard on PE because they could only, if they were gonna make divots or they were gonna make holes or they were gonna mess up, if it was muddy, look out because it can't mess it up on game day. So I will say that the turf, when we went and at the time, after we installed the turf, we did a thorough data analysis of the per dollar amount of time we gained in student activities on that field than we had prior to having it. And it paid for itself in student time on that field in less than 1 month. That's how big of a difference going to that made for our student programming. So having heard that, I mean, nobody else probably around the table would even know that because the business office worked with the athletic office at the time to do that. But it made such a significant positive impact to our students that it was 100% paid off in the time they got to spend on there. All kinds of groups, soccer, music, football, everybody, PE, they all got to use it. Yeah, absolutely. In just a month. We were shocked because we thought it would take at least 6 months. 1 month was all it took. So I just want us to be aware of what it impacts student programming because that's really ultimately what this is all about. It's the dollars are hard and they're hard to come by. I mean, and they're hard to keep. But what impacts our student programming the most is really the ultimate purpose of why we make the decisions that we make. I would be hesitant and extremely hesitant to go back to the grass field because of that alone. And that's simply because I got to see that in action. It may not matter to like anybody else, but because you could put the hours to dollars, it was unreal to actually see that. So I would say it's just something good to know.
There was a big push to have the Pee Wee teams out there. I mean, they wanted everybody on that field to try to justify the cost because it cost them.
But we didn't do that. We didn't have Pee Wee teams out there. They came for games, but
they had junior. Yeah, the little teams played out there.
But not during the time in which we were doing that analysis.
But I mean that because you're running.
Our third and fourth grade, fifth and sixth grade, 7th and 8th.
I think that's valid.
It's good for culture.
You paid $1 million, get as many bets on it as you can.
And it's good for culture. The kids want to come here.
Well, I think in 10 years, which we're probably on a 10-year cycle, we'll have a much better sense of if we want to go back to turf or not, maybe. I think, because right now, I think it's...
If we want to go back to grass?
Grass, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's unclear. And so that makes,
Hey, I mean,
my biggest, and so let's put that aside. My biggest thing is, can you mention the moving the tennis court or moving the softball field? I've heard that 100 times, but yet there's no plan.
Whoa,
So-
whoa, whoa. We had no
Okay,
ground to
there's
move
no,
them.
there's no overall plan
couldn't
that
go
I've ever
anywhere.
seen.
We couldn't go anywhere.
Excuse me.
So,
Excuse me, that's not what we're talking about right here, and I have heard already that being addressed, so I'd like to move on.
in what way?
I have heard that a plan is forthcoming, and so we need to
Let's
not
get a date
badger our cabinet and instead move on.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right,
Holzer.
thank
sir.
you. All right, so moving on to preview of upcoming meetings and events, Dr. Wright.
President Stoll's trustees, our next time in which we will be together is for a work session on November 8th, right here in the boardroom at 5:30. Our next scheduled business meeting will be November 20th, right here again in the board meeting at 5:30.
All right.
As for our bell ringer, I'm going to ask that Mrs. Hazel Baker rejoin us at the podium. We always appreciate hearing the upcoming events and things that are current here in RCS. Mrs.
I
Hazel
think
Baker.
everyone's super excited next week's fall break. Yes. We also have a big RHS choir concert tomorrow at 7 o'clock. For those of you who can make it, I'd love to see you there at 7 o'clock. And then also, all of our elementary students in all of our buildings will be heading over to Civic Hall on November 8th on a performance estate that's called It's Okay to Be Different. So if you guys have a moment to go over there and see that, that'd be kind of fun. We have a morning show and an afternoon show there at Civic Hall.
Thank you, Mrs. Hazel Baker. And I would simply just like to conclude by thanking the students of Westview Elementary School, the faculty, staff, stakeholders, and everyone who made the Lester Landing experience possible. I wish we had enough time to highlight all of the other marvelous things that are occurring in our elementary levels, Test Intermediate, Dennis, as well as Richmond High School, there at CYS, and also the Hayward Building. Just some fantastic, and the fact that all the students signed it is just remarkable. So I'm going to definitely put this in a special place in my office.
Awesome. All right, Pete, you had something?
On November 1st, Ms. Volpe sent us an email this morning of a student council event at the girls' basketball game. I think it's another trick-or-treat event for the community, but I think it would be good for the board to be able to have a presence there with at least a table and handing out kids at that event.
Awesome. And yeah, for the community, that's called Dunk or Treat. It's the girls' basketball game on November 1st from 6 to 8. And it's basically included with the admission, from what I understand. So, yeah, any other announcements or any other?
Are you volunteering to be dumped?
I'm not.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard. Okay, I just wanted to double check. I heard that.
It's called Dunk or Treat, but
Dr. Wright, are you going to be dumped?
I think I hear a motion for adjournment.
we are so adjourned. Thank you.